Chapter 466. The capital of the Decheong Sea Kingdom was located in a bay surrounded by countless rocks and reefs. The wind and waves here were very strong, and the reefs split the waves, creating countless undercurrents and whirlpools. There were also hidden reefs, and the big and small waterways were interconnected, making it difficult for people who were not mermaids to travel. Sea snakes, dragon whales, walruses, and other evil beasts lived here, making it a nightmare for ships. Although the merfolk could hide in the deep sea and were even more secretive, the merfolk just happened to be amphibious. Just like seals and walruses, they liked to frolic on the reefs. Moreover, the deep-sea poisonous dragons devour the merfolk's people. Only in this kind of complicated and narrow waterway could they better protect themselves. The previous monarch also spent a lot of effort to find such a place. Chun Ong rowed the golden ship of fate and came to the front of the barren reef. He saw that there was a slightly flat area in the northwest corner that was already open to merchants. Many merchant ships were docked there, occupying the barren reef and building pavilions to sell their goods to the passing ships. Chun Ong did not care about this, and only activated the talisman that he had left for his disciple. Not long after, a sea loach swam out of the reef waterway and stopped in front of him. Third Princess Ling Sha came out from the belly of the sea loach, and when she saw Chun Ong, she said happily, "Master, you have returned from the Moon Island. I am sorry that I could not welcome you. I have ordered people to prepare a banquet in the courtyard to welcome you." Many of the third princess's arrogant habits had not been washed away. If it was not for the fact that Chun Ong saw that she had rich Gui water essential chi and knew how to work hard, he would have already scolded her. Cultivators had the most time, but also the most urgent. If they indulged themselves and enjoyed themselves, they would naturally have 10 times the time of ordinary people to enjoy themselves. If they were to seek enlightenment, they would quietly cultivate every day, and their time would be even more urgent than ordinary people. How would they have the time to attend the banquet? Did they really think that the 500-year tribulation of the immortals was a small matter? After thinking about this, Chun Ong let her come up. Princess Ling Sha wanted to open the way for him, but she did not expect the golden ship to turn into a beam of light and go straight to her palace after making many turns in the waterway. The speed of the ship was extremely fast. In just a blink of an eye, it had stopped in the middle of the courtyard. When the maids and guard from all directions saw it, they all surrounded it. Princess Lingsha could only stand on the boat and berate them a few times before respectfully inviting Chun Ong in. She was just a princess of a sea nation, but she already had the grandeur of a great Ming marquis on land. She had a pearl palace that was luxurious and luxurious. Even the emperor of the great Ming dynasty would not dare to build such a thing in his harem. However, the emperor of the great Ming was very poor. Most likely Emperor Chongzhen was not even willing to eat right now, so there was no point in comparing them. Chun Ong glanced around and sneered. "Your pearl palace is too simple and crude. It's really not worthy of my disciple's identity. Let me put on some makeup for you." After saying that, countless gold jade, pearls, corals, and gems flew out of his sleeves. They were 100 times more luxurious than before. They piled up in the palace as if they were free. Those who saw it were shocked to the core, and their minds swayed. After finishing, he said to Princess Lingsha, "Your master has not seen your good friend and sister yet. Go and invite them over." He walked into the Pearl Palace first and sat on the guest seat on the left. With a wave of his right sleeve, countless water droplets fell to the ground and broke into pieces. The water droplets then turned into fairy guards that looked like real people, creating the grandeur of a celestial palace. At first, Princess Lingsha was in a daze, afraid that Chun Ong would act up. However, after a long time, he did not berate her, and she calmed down. She found a few good friends and invited the 2 princesses who had a grudge with her. Not long after, the guests arrived. Princess Lingsha carefully observed Chun Ang's expression, her good friends, and her old grudge. When she saw the countless treasures piled up in the Pearl Palace, she could not take her eyes off it. She looked left and right, and everywhere she looked, there were all kinds of rare treasures. The maids and guards were tall and beautiful, and the rules were strict. The etiquette was elegant, and the atmosphere was full of power. She tried her best to flatter Princess Lingsha, and the two sisters who had a grudge with her looked at her with jealousy. They wanted to curry favor with her, but they were afraid of losing face. The atmosphere created by Chunong was completely in line with the mentality of the nobles. It was like a fine wine, intoxicating and intoxicating. Princess Lingsha didn't have much of a resistance. In the beginning, she only knew how to observe Chun Ang's expression, but as time went on, she became completely engrossed in it. She imitated the methods she learned in the palace and the way the royal family enjoyed their power. She mocked her two sisters while enjoying the flattery from the people around her. She was born into a wealthy family and was very familiar with such things. When Chenong saw that she was completely immersed in it, he smiled coldly and suddenly stood up. "Watch me show you a magic trick." Ling Sha came back to her senses. She saw Chun Ong flicking his fingers, and a huge ball of lightning appeared. He flicked it downwards. The ball of lightning landed on the jade floor, and a strong suction force suddenly appeared. Everything that landed on the floor was crushed into pieces. It smashed the corals, broke the golden palace, smashed the jade, and scattered the pearls. The entire pearl palace was reduced to dust in an instant. Ling Sha and the others felt as if their souls had left their bodies, and their hearts were filled with shock. When the noble mermaids saw the fist-sized gemstones, cat's eye, agate, and jadeite being crushed by the lightning ball, they screamed and fainted. After being shocked by them, Ling Sha regained her senses and quickly knelt down in front of Chunong. "Do you know why I said that all the cultivators in the world do not accept royalty as disciples?" Chunong said indifferently with his hands behind his back. The third princess, Ling Sha, trembled and kowtowed. "I know I am wrong. I wanted to see how determined you are to be able to cultivate in the Palace of Riches. Among cultivators, those who can endure humiliation are considered low grade. Those who can endure loneliness are middle grade, and those who can endure wealth are considered high grade. I think your temperament is considered high grade. Even if you are surrounded by riches, you will not change your mind." Chenong smiled at her, but it made Princess Ling Sha even more afraid. "It seems like you don't have the ability to do so." Chenong sneered. "If you have a heart to leave the mortal world and seek Tao, you should treat riches as floating clouds. Do you know what to do?" Chenong stood on the wreckage of the Pearl Palace, and his words were very convincing. Princess Ling Sha kowtowed to the ground and did not dare to wipe the blood off her forehead. She said firmly, "I know. If Ling Sha was his direct disciple, Chenong would not let her go so easily. He would have many tricks up his sleeves, and his methods would not be so crude. However, Ling Sha was just a spare test subject. As long as he did not waste his efforts and let his investment go to waste, it would be fine. He did not care whether Ling Sha would be successful in the future. It was like raising a pig. If a fat pig did not grow meat, it would be taught a lesson. If a pig was lazy and could not grow healthy meat, it was a small matter." Chapter 467. The Pearl Palace was destroyed, and the group of noble ladies from the Merman Kingdom left in a daze, leaving only Chun Ong and Princess Ling Sha in the ruins. Ling Sha was woken up by this, and she no longer dared to act like a member of the royal family. She changed into a simple Taoist robe and got ready to serve Chenong. She planned to travel the South Sea with Chenong and cultivate in seclusion. She distributed all the items from the Pearl Palace to the maids and people from the Merman Kingdom, telling them to seek protection from Prince Jiaoli. Ever since their last trip to the Purple Cloud Palace, they had been wandering around the Purple Cloud Palace for a few months without any gains. Not only did the two of them form quite a good friendship, but Prince Jiaoli also wandered around the Purple Cloud Palace, picking up many ownerless Dharma treasures and even Taoist books and notes. Although they were just unorthodox things left behind by the Purple Cloud Palace disciples that Chunong had casually killed, to Prince Jiaoli, they were already very valuable. Now that Prince Jiaoli had cultivated a whole body of unorthodox magic power and had several unorthodox magic treasures with him, he was vaguely the #1 prince of the Merfolk Sea Kingdom. If these mermaids sought shelter under him, their future would be better than Princess Ling Sha's. However, Ling Sha did not mind. She was focused on the Zhuanghan painting that Chenong left for her, so she did not have time to worry about other things. Chenong saw that although her Taoist heart was clouded, her skills did not deteriorate. That was why he was willing to continue cultivating her. Otherwise, she would just be a one-time test subject. Seeing that she was wholeheartedly refining the frigid cold painting, Chenong, who had always been fair in rewards and punishments, gave her some benefits. Chenong ordered, "Open up the painting." Ling Shan naturally did not dare to disobey. Chun-ong casually dripped 3 drops of Xianming true water onto the cold diagram. A chilling qi instantly thickened the essence of the cold diagram. Ling Sha also felt the true qi from the Xianming true water, and her mana gradually carried a little bit of the true water of Xianming true water that could freeze through the ages and never change. The two of them packed their things and prepared to board the golden ship to escape to the South China Sea. Suddenly, a group of eunuchs from the Merfolk Sea Kingdom rushed over. The Merfolk Sea Kingdom was influenced by the culture of the Middle East. They did not learn anything else, but they learned a lot about the rules of the eunuchs in the palace. The leader of the group was an old eunuch who was probably more than 100 years old. It could be seen that his bad habits ran deep. He bowed deeply to Chenong and said, "Immortal Elder, please wait. Our king has heard that the princess's teacher has come to visit, so he has come to invite you. His Majesty has already set up a banquet in the palace and has invited Immortal Elder to join us." When Chenong saw the fear on Princess Lingsha's face, he shook his head with a smile and replied, "Fine, let's go see this king. Why did he summon me?" But in his heart, he made up his mind. Looking at her, she hasn't completely woken up yet. Even though she has broken free from her heart of riches and honor, she still hasn't broken free from the influence of the palace. This cautious attitude is the fear that the Sea Kingdom's royal court has accumulated for decades. Fine, I'll work hard again and teach her a lesson. I'll let her know that us cultivators are lawless and domineering. With this thought in mind, he said to the eunuch who came to report, "Please lead the way." When the eunuch saw Chan-ong stepping on the rubble of the jewels, he thought that this trip would be full of twists and turns. Just as he was thinking about how to deal with the King of Mermaids, he didn't expect Chun-ong to agree so easily. He happily bowed to Chun-ong and led the way. After walking for a short distance, they arrived at a palace that was 10 times bigger than Princess Lingsha's palace. Loud cheers could be heard coming from inside, and it sounded like a banquet. Princess Lingsha was furious. How is this a banquet for Chenong? It was obviously a banquet that the King of Mermaids had set up herself. When she heard that Chenong was a person, she summoned him. This kind of humiliation was equivalent to seeking death. How could Princess Lingsha tolerate it? She even threw her fear of the King of Mermaids to the back of her mind. She took the lead and asked, "What is the meaning of this?" The eunuch was timid and didn't dare to answer. However, the people inside seemed to have heard something. A voice that was obviously depleted by alcohol, and women came from the hall. "Are the 3 of us here? Come in and pour the wine for the guests." Ling Sha was anxious and angry at the same time, but Chenong, who was usually calm, did not mind at all. He walked into the hall first, and there were more than 10 strange-looking people inside. Among them, there was a man with disheveled hair and a tattoo on his left lapel. He was playing with a red-scaled snake in front of a drunken old merman. There were others in Taoist robes, some with piercing rings, and some with tattoos on their faces. They would be considered demons in Middle-earth, but here they were the King of Mermaids' guest. He took a quick glance and walked up to the stage. The others were also looking at him. When they saw that he was a young man of 16 or 17 years old, they looked down on him. The people here were all uncultured and ignorant. They probably hadn't even heard of Zherenji Lu before. Naturally, they didn't know how powerful the boy and the shorty were in the Shushan world. Someone laughed, still wet behind the ears. His voice wasn't soft. His words echoed in the hall, causing everyone to laugh. Chun-ong was clearly smiling, but there was nothing in his eyes. It was as if everyone here was just an interesting background, and he didn't care what they said at all. If Qi Jinshan heard what they said, he would kill everyone here. The King of Mermaids sat on the throne and spoke in a drunken manner. He He first shouted, "Three ladies, didn't you always want to cultivate and learn Tao? Why aren't you pouring wine for the immortals? If there are immortals who are interested in your talent, Father's efforts will not be in vain." As soon as he finished speaking, someone slammed the table and stood up. He looked at Princess Lingsha lustfully and laughed. "Third princess, you are indeed talented. Scarlet Thunder Island has many spells. As long as you serve me respectfully, I will teach you many powerful spells. No one in the sea country will dare to provoke you." As soon as he finished, he spat out a flame from his mouth, causing the entire hall to cheer. Lingsha looked on coldly. Even she, who had cultivated for a few months, couldn't compete with such uncultured spells. She had accumulated some mana, but she learned from the orthodox mystic door. Her mana was thousands of times more powerful than the uncultured spells. With the Jiguang Han painting, she could easily kill someone like this. However, she still couldn't get rid of the influence of the imperial power that took away their lives. Chenong had to be a role model for her. At this moment, the Mermaid King looked at Chenong with a drunken look in her eyes. She laughed loudly and said, "You are the master of us three girls? I don't think you have any abilities. Do you have any powerful spells? Show me." He looked like he was treating Chenong like a clown. His eyes were half opened, as if he didn't care about Chenong at all. The three ladies of Purple Cloud Palace didn't dare to talk to Chenong like this. Even the two elders of Mount Song and Master Lianshan had to be respectful. Even though Chenong was just a reincarnated youth, they had to talk to him as an equal. Lingsha didn't know why her father was so reckless. Seeing him fawning over those uncultured demons that she didn't care about and shouting at her, she was touched. However, there was a layer of paper between them, and she couldn't scratch the itch. Chenong nodded slightly and shouted, "Everyone, do you really want to see?" A bit of primary Chun, Shui Jing, sword light appeared. Princess Lingsha shuddered as she watched. She couldn't forget how Chenong had killed almost everyone in the EC immortal abode back at the Purple Cloud Palace. She couldn't forget how Chenong had killed almost everyone in the EC immortal abode. However, the people around them only sneered and looked down on Chenong. Their eyes were filled with disdain. The Mermaid King didn't even want to talk. He leaned on his throne and waved his sleeve impatiently. "You can try." Chenong smiled and shook his head. He waited for Lingsha to beg in fear. "Master, please be merciful." Shui Jing's sword light had already been unleashed. The sword light was as fast as lightning, and no one here could block it. Even if there were people who reacted in time and activated their protective spells, they would still be sliced into two pieces by the gentle sword light. Except for the unorthodox disciple of the Scarlet Thunder Island, whose sword light bypassed him, the others were all killed in a flash. The Mermaid King was dumbfounded. He couldn't even hold the wine cup in his hand steadily, and it slipped from his hand. He pointed at Chenong and said with a trembling voice, "You, how dare you? How dare you?" Then he shouted, "Someone come here! Someone come!" Chenong took a step forward and asked with his head tilted, "Is my sword sharp? Are my spells exquisite? Are my skills pleasing to the eye?" Seeing the Mermaid King scared out of his wits, he shook his head and laughed. He turned to ask Lingsha, "Have you learned anything?" Lingsha turned to look at the golden palace that was littered with corpses. Suddenly, she had an idea and broke through the barrier. She waved the cold frost painting in her hand and froze the uncultured cultivator of Scarlet Thunder Island, who said he wanted to take her in. The Mermaid King's eyes were no longer bright. Although he couldn't be as indifferent as Chenong, he was at least treated as a normal person. The last shackles in his heart melted, and he was no longer restrained. The master and disciple left on the golden ship. Prince Jiao Li came in from the back of the palace and saw the Mermaid King lying on the throne. His eyes were filled with disdain. The Mermaid King didn't know anything and said while trembling, "Your sister? She's crazy." Chapter 468. Chenong brought Princess Lingsha out of the Great Xiong Kingdom. Seeing that she was reluctant to leave, he smiled and asked, "You can't bear to leave this place?" Chenong had given Princess Lingsha a few warnings previously, so he was already a very dignified person in Princess Lingsha's eyes. Fortunately, This was how the world was, so she didn't feel that there was anything wrong with it. The prestige of a master was like that of a father or a ruler. If he made any mistakes, it was not an exaggeration to punish him to death. Hearing Chenang's question, she replied respectfully, "I don't have anyone that I miss. Even if I have a few good friends, fourth brother, and I will take care of them. It's just that my mount was fated with master. I can't bear to leave it here to be used by others." Chenang then thought of the dragon whale. Their relationship as master and disciple stemmed from this. The karma between them was understandable. He said, "That's easy. You can follow me to the South Sea. The Eye of the Sea is huge. Not to mention one dragon whale. We can even raise a group of them. Let's delay for a while and go get it. We'll bring it along with us." Lingsha was still worried. The dragon whale was psychic, and she loved it very much. Moreover, it was the reason why she became master's disciple, so she had a higher opinion of it. The only thing she couldn't let go of was this beast. She was always worried that it would be mistreated by others. Hearing this, she was a little excited. She pointed to the northwest of the reef and said, "Our country's whale court is located there." Chenang saw that it was the place where the merchants were staying. He frowned and asked, "Why do you want the guests to stay there? Isn't that taking over the whale court?" Lingsha answered nervously, "The whale court has the deepest waters and the least number of submerged reefs. As long as the ships don't go too deep into the waterway, they won't run aground." Chenang nodded and said, "That's true. Follow me then." At this time, the shops on the reef gradually became prosperous. The people here did not have the time to build houses or lofts. Even if they had the time, they would not care about such things. The sea waves were huge. When the storm came, no matter how sturdy a building was, it would still be destroyed. Most of the sea merchants just hung their goods on the reef, letting the passing ships inspect them. Those who were interested could use a boat to cross. Because the waterway was very wide, there was no need to worry about people being stuck behind. The waterway to the whale court had to pass through the sea market. Chenang was interested in exploring it, so he slowed down the speed of the ship and slowly sailed past it. The sea market was a gathering of the merchants from all over the world. Due to the ocean currents, storms, and other reasons, the merchants from all over the world had their own coincidences. It was rare for them to arrive together in peace. Therefore, there was a place known as the Four Seas Link. It coincidentally happened to be the time of the year that was suitable for the passage of sea merchants from the four seas. This sea market would be established. There would be 1 or 2 markets a year, and the amount of sea goods that it took in and sent out was extremely large. Moreover, there was no tax, so that day would be extremely lively. However, this was not the type of sea fair that the Merfolk Kingdom was holding this time. Instead, it was the Merfolk King spreading the news of his daughter's marriage and opening up the resources of the Sea Kingdom. The specialties of the Merfolk country were never lacking in sales. They were extremely rare in the four seas, so there were many merchants that came to form this sea market. Chenang did not care about the sea goods that were sold in the market. The treasures that he had broken in the Kaltra Pearl Palace could probably buy half of the market here. No matter how rich a mortal was, how could he be richer than an immortal? It was just that the karma of money was too heavy. Otherwise, Chenang would probably be able to support the entire Great Ming dynasty by himself. Therefore, he only headed towards the place where information was exchanged on the sea. Information was the most important thing for merchants traveling the world. The sea market intersected the four seas and accommodated the 8 desolates. It was the place where information was the best. Of course, the sea merchants from all over the world would not miss it. Furthermore, countless sea countries relied on this place to gather information from all over the world. Therefore, there was actually a desolate reef in the sea market that had many tea houses set up. There were even some small boats that brushed past the reef. The people on the boats roared and communicated with others. Just as Chenang arrived, he heard a group of sea merchants dressed in Great Ming Dynasty's attire, discussing loudly. One of them said, "It's all thanks to Crane Collar Sword Hero Wong that the Northwest could form an alliance to protect themselves. Now that the 4 provinces in the Northwest are protecting each other and chasing the bandits out of the province, who knows how many of our fellow countrymen have been saved. Hero Wang is truly a Buddha to all. His merits are boundless. Another person at the side sneered and said, that traitor Wang Ming colluded with the local authorities. What does he see the imperial court as? He chased the bandits into the Hui tribe and said that he was driving wolves to devour tigers. What does he see the country's law as? It's all you people from the Northwest who worshipped him as the alliance master of the martial world. Do you think I don't know you? You're here to help him. I dare to say that the one who caused chaos in the great Ming dynasty is definitely Wang Ming. The person who spoke then looked back and sneered. I was wondering who it was. So it's you bunch of traitors. Alliance Master exposed the matter of your true Yang sword sect, colluding with the bandits and nurturing the bandits. He led my Northwest Alliance to exterminate your sect. I already expected that there would be some fish that slipped through the net. I didn't expect them to actually escape overseas. Alliance Master suppressed the bandits so that the imperial court could deal with the Tartars without worry. He contributed to the country. How could he be slandered by you traitors? Die. The two of them pulled out their weapons and were about to fight with their lives on the line. However, they were stopped by others who said, you mustn't do this. If you attract the Mermaid Kingdom's guards, there will be trouble. Only then did they stop fighting. However, one of them scolded, traitor, you have the ambition of a wolf. The other shouted, colluding with the Tartars and reselling ironware and grain. One was a Shaanxi aristocrat, and the other was a Shaanxi merchant. Both of them hated each other and wished they could tear each other into pieces. It turned out that after Wang Ming returned to the Northwest after practicing Taoism, even though he left his family was still a local tyrant with thousands of mu of fertile land. His friends were all local aristocrats, and he had countless connections. Relying on his great martial arts, he became the alliance master of the martial world in the Northwest. He led the families of Shaanxi to fight a few battles. Because of his magical power and supernatural powers, he actually won several battles and became famous. Because of his upright background, the imperial court entrusted him with the important task of training the people of the Northwest to protect themselves. One moment of carelessness, and he caused a huge ruckus. He actually contacted several provinces in the Northwest to form an alliance to protect himself. Now, he was the commander of a region and had a high position. His reputation in the martial world was even more prominent, and he had the potential to enter the martial world of the Central Plains. On the other side was the Shaanxi merchant. It seemed that they were colluding with the northern bandits. The imperial court did not have any evidence, but Wang Ming led the martial artists to massacre them and took away a lot of their wealth. Both sides had a blood feud, and it was impossible for them to coexist. Even if they were thousands of miles away from the sea, they would still fight to the death. After arguing for a while, the man who had joined True Yang sword sect from Jinshang suddenly sneered and said, that traitor Wang Ming is just relying on some skills taught by a swordsman. Now, we have invited a real senior immortal from overseas. He is now the guest of honor of the Mermaid Kingdom. He is the second island master of the Black Wind Island, Black Demon Sanren. He wields the Black Wind Trident. With the senior's help, he will definitely die a horrible death. Princess Lingsha asked Chun Ong curiously, Master, is this person in the main hall? Chapter 469. When Chunong heard this, he had a rough idea of what was going on. He thought to himself, I left a thought with Wang Ming, but I didn't expect him to become so powerful. I modeled that thought's personality after the apocalypse. I'm already thick-skinned and black-hearted, but it's 10 times more vicious than me. I really can't underestimate it. As a righteous expert, it's not good for me to make things difficult for the Manchurian Qing. I wonder what will happen if I let it out to bear the consequences. Chinong couldn't help but shed tears of sympathy for the Liaodong Tartars. He hoped that they would be able to get out of this predicament as soon as possible. After casually planting a strand of the demon in the body of the Jin merchant, Chun Ong and Princess Lingsha turned to leave and went straight to the whale court. It was the most remote place in the northwest corner of the reef. The sea was wide and deep, and along the way, there were soldiers from the great Xiongxi nation guarding it, not allowing unauthorized people to enter. Of course, These soldiers recognized the third princess, so Chunong wasn't stopped. When they arrived at the pavilion on the reef, Princess Lingsha saw that there were over 100 ships tied together with iron chains on the opposite side of the sea. There were many palaces and pavilions on the ships, and faint music could be heard from them. She couldn't help but frown. She immediately shouted, "Guards, bring my dragon whale here." The low-ranking official in charge of guarding the whale court ran over with sweat all over his forehead and said fearfully, "Greetings, third princess. Your Highness, the whale court is being used to receive important merchants and guests from overseas. The dragon whale is currently holding up the palace for the High Nation to receive guests, so they can't be moved." Even though Princess Lingsha had a good temper, she couldn't help but be furious. "Who allowed you to use my dragon whale to hold up the ships? I don't dare to disobey your Highness's orders." The low-ranking official said with a bitter expression, "The guests in the palace are auctioning all sorts of rare treasures. Why don't we invite your Highness to take a look? After the auction is over, your dragon whale can be taken out for your Highness to travel." Lingsha wanted to say something else, but she was stopped by Chunong. She nodded and agreed, and someone brought them over. Lingsha chose a large ship with ease. The two of them sat down at the side of the ship before she introduced, "Every year, our High Kingdom will sell some products, but it's never as grand as this year. Father is muddle-headed and wants to marry off my sisters. That's why there are so many seafarers coming." Just as she finished speaking, a dragon whale floated up with the palace and slowly came to the front of the ship. There were many different kinds of sea beasts and strange fish in the deep sea. There were even a few mermaids curled up at the side. Princess Lingsha's expression turned ugly when she saw this. She whispered to Chun-Ong, "Master, our mermaid sea kingdom has the ability to tame beasts and explore the sea. There are some rare sea beasts here, and because they have special abilities, we sell them to the sea merchants." She pointed at a strange beast that looked like a dragon camel and said, "For example, this sea camel is one of the sea beasts with the best endurance. It can dive several miles deep into the ocean to fish for treasures. After being tamed by our country, it's docile and obedient. It's an excellent choice for collecting deep-sea pearls. We mermaids can't use it, but it's very rare in other countries. They'll spend a lot of money to buy it." As expected, before she finished speaking, the sea beast was bought by a large ship beside her. The asking price here was also very special. There was a puffin-like bird standing on the railing at the bow of the ship. As long as the customer told the puffin the price, the other pair of puffins on the deck would imitate it to the customer. The transaction was done in secret, and no outsiders would know. This was a hidden bid. There was another kind of open bid, and the host merman on the stage would explain it to everyone. They could also go up on the stage and show their treasures to everyone. Then, they would let everyone bid. After the transaction was done, they only needed to give the mermaid officials 1/10 of the profit. Therefore, the stage was bustling with people. There was even someone who drove a boat full of black people. He cupped his fists and said, "There are 59 Kunlun slaves on this boat. They're all very strong and loyal. Everyone knows the reputation of our Cheongsang High Kingdom for training people." He scolded a Kunlun slave. The Kunlun slave meekly bent down and lifted up a cauldron that was half the height of a person. Looking at the muscles on his hands, he probably had the strength of 800 to 900 caddies. After this display, it was quickly bought for the high price of 500 cubic meters of fine jade and 43 bushels of pearls. The whole boat of Kunlun slaves was handed over on the spot. Only now did Chun-Ong understand why they had to auction it on the ship, even though there weren't many people. It turned out that some goods were sold on the ship. Without a larger sea area, they really couldn't fit them. As soon as this boat went down, another boat came up. It was actually a boat of Woods-patterned steel. It weighed tens of thousands of caddies and was bought by someone for 500 gold. Other than that, there were boats of pepper, tea leaves, several hundred caddies of ambergris, and even 50 crossbows and 600 sets of bows and arrows from the Great Ming Dynasty. They were all handed over. The scale of the transaction and the speed of the transaction were too much for one's eyes to take in. It truly deserved to be called the Four Seas Sea Market. When the dragon whale floated up again, this time there were many exotic flowers and herbs on top of the dragon whale. The dragon whale seemed to be excited as it slapped the water with its huge tail. It seemed to be jumping for joy as it deviated from the direction of the dragon whale, approached Chenang's boat. Ling Sha exclaimed, "It's my whale." The merman official who brought them in quickly ran over and begged for mercy. "Princess, please calm the dragon whale down. I can't afford to ruin this sea market." Even though Ling Sha was angry, she wasn't unreasonable. She flew onto the dragon whale and controlled the water to slap its huge body. Finally, the dragon whale was calmed down. Only then did the people above let out a sigh of relief. Dozens of mermaids carried trays and displayed the spiritual herbs in the pavilion. Many seafarers came up from both sides and shouted noisily. Chenong heard someone asking, "Do you have thousand-year blood coral grass?" Coincidentally, this spiritual herb was a specialty of the Purple Cloud Palace. It wasn't commonly seen in other places. Maybe only the Xiankong Island in the North Sea grew it. Otherwise, it would be like searching for a needle in a haystack. The sea was so vast that it was like searching for a needle in a haystack. Chun Ong looted the 9-story Pearl Palace, and there were many in his collection. He couldn't help but pay attention to them. He saw that it was a man in a Taoist robe. He was also an overseas itinerant immortal with Taoist power. Others could only vaguely see him, but Chun Ong could clearly see that he cultivated a type of prime magnetic Dharma power, and it was quite extraordinary. Chapter 470. Chun Ong faintly smiled and shouted, "This item isn't worth anything. Since fellow Taoist has a use for it, I'll give it to fellow Taoist." With that said, he wrapped the spirit herb in his true chi and delivered it to the man. In the Four Seas, there weren't many people who could practice magnetism. Besides the individual immortals in the North and South Poles, there was only Tian Chi Esteem's family on Copper Coconut Island in the South Sea. Therefore, this man's background wasn't a secret to Chenong. It was just a coincidence that he gave the herb to him. Chenong didn't plan to trick him. That man had a heavy responsibility and had to get the 1,000-year-old blood coral grass. He hesitated for a while, then accepted it shamelessly. He cupped his fist and said, "My master wishes to concoct an elixir, so he sent me here to gather the herbs to concoct the elixir. I really can't do without these herbs. Copper Coconut Island's Lu He hereby thanks you." Chun Ong also cupped his fist and said, "Jinling's Qixia Mountains Lu's cultivator Chun Ong greets fellow Taoist." Chun Ong knew about Lu He's background. He was the son of a Chaozhou seafarer with the surname Lu. He was sailing with his father when they encountered a hurricane and the ship capsized. In desperation, his father tied him to a plank of the ship and let him drift with the current. Unexpectedly, a wave hit him on the back of a big whale. The whale carried him on its back and swam for thousands of miles. It kept its head above the sea and didn't sink into the water. When he swam near Copper Coconut Island, Tian Chi Esteemed saw him and saved him. At that time, Tian Chi Esteemed hadn't been cultivating for long and didn't have any disciples. He loved Lu He's talent, so he gave him coconut milk and panaceas. Although they were master and disciple, they were closer than father and son. Some time ago, Tian Chi Esteemed wanted to make a panacea for immortality. Lu He was the eldest disciple of Copper Coconut Island, so he left the island to find the panacea for his master. He and Chenong had a good conversation, so they returned to the boat. Lu He slowly told him the story. Originally, this medicine was not difficult to find. I heard that the Purple Cloud Palace, where the 3 phoenixes of the South Sea lived, had this kind of spirit herb. However, when I went to look for the medicine some time ago, I saw that the Purple Cloud Palace's sea was closed, and the island that welcomed guests was sealed. I had no choice but to find another way. Chenong was stunned for a moment. Then he laughed and said, "I wonder how many spirit herbs fellow Taoist is lacking? Please tell me all of them, and I'll see if I can be of more help." Lu He's face was full of joy as he said, "Other than this one, which is a little rare, the others are common spiritual herbs found in the sea. There's no need to trouble you." He took out a bag of mother sand from his sleeve and offered it. I had prepared a lot of gifts and befriended Chief Steward Dong Xiao of the Purple Cloud Palace, asking her to gather some spiritual medicine for me. I didn't expect that a great enemy of the Purple Cloud Palace would come and suppress their palace. So there was no conclusion to this matter. This bag of metamagnet divine sand was originally prepared to exchange for spiritual medicine, so please don't reject it. Chen Ang's generosity made Lu He heave a sigh of relief. Cultivators were most afraid of debts of favors. It was easy to repay a high-interest debt, but difficult to repay a debt of favors. Previously, there was Senior Shan Gongbao, and recently, there was Fairy Su Feinyang. Both of them were people who could make you pay with a little favor. Lu He was also a disciple of a prestigious sect, so how could he not know? However, this medicine was of great importance, so Lu He could not reject it, so he accepted it shamelessly. However, he had to be vigilant to avoid bringing disaster to his sect. Chen Ang's acceptance of the things made the two of them more comfortable with each other, and Lu He had a good impression of him. Chen Ang called Ling Sha over and smiled. I also obtained these spiritual medicines from the Purple Cloud Palace. Fellow Taoist, why don't you tell me what else you lack? I'll give it to you here to avoid trouble in the future. Lu He was surprised. Oh, Chen Daoyu was also allowed to collect so many spiritual medicines because he befriended their manager, Dong Xiao. This made Princess Ling Sha's heart tremble, and it also made Chen Ang think, I can't tell the truth about this. I can't say that I killed them with one sword strike, killed Dong Xiao, destroyed the passage of the divine sand, and forced the Amei sect to send people to show up. Then, I made a deal with them and obtained 1/7 of the Purple Cloud Palace. He could only lie. That's not it. The truth is that I exchanged with the master of the Purple Cloud Palace. Lu He did not suspect anything, and the two of them had a pleasant conversation. The other spiritual medicines that Lu He needed were also provided by Chen Ang. When he heard that Chen Ang was going to the South Sea to set up his sect, Lu He volunteered to go with them and help Chen Ang set up his sect. The huge dragon whale was put into the 9-turn Yellow River formation by Chen Ang and accompanied by Macho. Now that there was nothing else to worry about, the three of them boarded the golden ship of good fortune and headed toward the South Sea. Lu He learned the true teachings of the magnetism dharma power of the Copper Coconut Island, and it happened to be connected to the magnetism restriction in the golden ship of good fortune, so he could see some of its wonders. Sensing the ocean-like pressure in the core of this dharma treasure that was driven by the magnetism, Lu He did not dare to underestimate it. He had only seen this kind of divine magnetism light on a magnetic peak of the Copper Coconut Island. Although the divine magnetism aura in the Copper Coconut Island was not a dharma treasure, it was Tianqi's most powerful technique, and it was also what he relied on to cultivate his earth spirit dharma power. The magnetic force in Chen Ang's golden ship was just a part of the force that grew from the divine magnetism thunderball. The difference was so huge that Lu He was confused. Could it be that this Chen Daoyu's dharma power is stronger than Master's? This absurd thought flashed through his mind and was almost instantly thrown to the back of the mind of this child who respected his teacher. The golden ship of good fortune used the magnetic force to escape, and its speed was even faster than Lu He's trident. There was another difference between the Copper Coconut Island and other people. Nowadays, all the cultivators in the world valued swords, but only the Copper Coconut Island favored flying tridents, which were better than ordinary flying swords. On the ship, Lu He often hit the water with the flying trident to practice the art of forking, which made Chen Ang feel strange, and he consulted him a few times. Only then did he know that the art of forking was very similar to swordsmanship, and it was only equivalent to a different kind of swordsmanship. The sea was vast, and the waves were vast and boundless. The golden ship of good fortune entered the South Sea from the East Sea, and it traveled for a month before they saw a faint black shadow floating in the stormy waves. At first, they thought it was an ordinary island, but when Lu He stood up in shock, they realized that they had arrived at the Copper Coconut Island. Many whale heads of different sizes appeared in the surrounding sea, and each of them had a piercing mouth. When they opened their mouths, dozens of silver arrows were shot into the sky. Looking at the island, the coconut trees on the shore reached the sky, and the scenery was picturesque. On the shore, there were 20 to 30 bare-armed men and women in short clothes with open sleeves. Each of them was holding 3 to 5 coconuts, and they jumped into the sea like pellets, playing with the whales. Chapter 471. Luha had joined the sect much earlier than his fellow disciples. Most of their spells were taught by him on behalf of their master, so he had a high prestige among them. Seeing him come back with his friends, they all greeted him warmly. Of course, some of them were dissatisfied. They pretended to be happy, but in fact, they were hiding evil intentions. Chunong sensed a malicious intent from a triangular-eyed man, which was directed at him and Luha. That man smiled and asked with concern, "Big brother, did you have a smooth trip to find the herbs? I'm friends with Dongxiao. If I didn't find the herbs, you can take my letter to her. She will definitely give me face." Luha said indifferently, "Everything is fine. I didn't delay Master's important business. I heard that the Purple Cloud Palace has provoked a powerful enemy, and their gate was broken. Now they have sealed their cave, so I can't ask for the herbs. If it wasn't for Qindao's help, I don't know how many times I would have failed. I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to come back within 10 years. As he spoke, he introduced Chenong to everyone and bowed to them one by one. When Chenong returned the greeting, he felt the triangular-eyed man staring at his back with malicious intent. He couldn't help but sneer in his heart. This person is so narrow-minded. Just because I helped Luha, he hates me. The rumor that Tianqi only accepts disciples based on fate, not good or evil, is true. If it weren't for Tianqi's strict sect rules, he would have been in trouble long ago. But looking at Lu He's behavior, it seems that he doesn't know his fellow disciples' true nature. The copper coconut trees on the island stood tall and straight, looking like umbrellas. Following the uneven topography of the shore, the coconut trees were lined up in rows, each of them 100 zhang tall, looking very neat. Even though Chunong had seen coconut trees before, these giant copper coconuts that were hundreds of meters tall and even steeper than skyscrapers were rare. The white sand under his feet was like a sprinkle. Chunong saw that everyone on Copper Coconut Island was barefooted and dressed in green. He couldn't help but feel mischievous. He also stretched out his feet to take off his shoes and socks. Strolling barefoot on the beach, he had a different kind of fun. Copper Coconut Island was very vast. Although it was called an island, it was actually not much smaller than Indonesia's territory on Earth. On the island, there was a mountain peak that reached the horizon. Chenong could feel the magnetic earth veins that branched off from the North Pole circulating on the mountain peak. The magnetic pure aura was copious and powerful, and all metal objects on the island could not be preserved. As for the magnetic mana, only Lu He was able to successfully cultivate it. It could be seen that even on Copper Coconut Island, this mana was not something that anyone could cultivate. Chenong knew that this magnetic mountain was made by Tianqi from the mud of the swamp. Just by looking at it, he knew that Tianqi's earthly immortal fruit was not just for show. Not to mention that after he made this mountain, his mana had greatly improved and was much stronger than before. Luha ordered people to pick the copper coconut tree to serve Chenong. This tree was as big as a dustpan. Its shell was also made of 1,000-year-old copper coconut tree ironwood. Ordinary flying swords couldn't cut it. Someone carried several of these huge trees. The triangular-eyed man took 2 and put them in front of Chenong. He didn't open the coconut tree shell. He wanted to see Chenong make a fool of himself. He himself blocked the way of others. It should be known that on the Copper Coconut Island, once released, anything refined for metal would be sucked in by the magnetic mountain. He was sure that Chenong didn't know about this and wanted to make him lose face. Among magic treasures, metal was the sharpest. If Chenong wanted to open the copper coconut tree shell, he would have to release his flying swords and magic treasures. At that time, not only would the magic treasures be sucked in by the magnetic mountain, but he would also lose face. If he could make Chenong and Lu He become enemies, it would be even better. Chenong naturally knew what he was thinking, but he was speechless. Lu He was not a dead man. It seemed like Copper or Coconut Island was too isolated. The disciples couldn't even scheme against each other. These kinds of idiots were considered simple and honest among mortals. It was also because Luha let them be. Otherwise, even 10 of these idiots would have been tricked to death by him. As expected, when Luha saw it, a cold light flashed in his eyes. However, he didn't lose his temper in front of Chenong because he wanted to protect his master's face. Instead, he personally picked up the Eastern Tai Divine Wood, a knife made from the 10,000-year-old copper coconut tree shell. He wanted to open the coconut tree shell for Chenong. Our copper coconut island has a North Pole, true magnetic earth vein. Ordinary metal objects can't be released on the island. If fellow Taoist carries metal objects, you need to be careful. On the 1st and 15th of every month, when my master absorbs the true magnetic earth vein, you need to guard your mind and silently use your mana to suppress the magic treasure's abnormal movement. At this point, he suddenly remembered the golden ship that Chenong used to bring him here. Suddenly, he smiled bitterly and said, "I forgot about fellow Taoist's golden ship. Such a huge magic treasure that weighs tens of thousands of kilograms. It's better not to go within 1,000 miles of the island. Fortunately, there are still 8 days until the 15th. At that time, I will personally send fellow Taoist off." Chenong shook his head and smiled. "Brother Lu, there's no need to do it. I'll do it myself." As soon as he finished, the halo behind his head moved. The water view sword turned into a halo and flew out. With a flash, it cut open the copper coconut in front of him, revealing a clear pool of water inside. Under the contrast of the milky white coconut flesh, it was extremely moving and cute. It made Chenong's mouth twitch. When Chenong tasted it for the first time, it was indeed refreshing and tasty. It was extremely fresh and sweet, refreshing one's heart. His action made many people at the side look at him in a new light. They thought that the friends that their eldest senior brother made were not ordinary. It was rare to see such a sharp magic treasure that was not restrained by the magnetic force. Although the flying sword made from the Tai Divine would have extraordinary power, it lacked this kind of sharpness. It couldn't be considered superior. To restrain the copper coconut shell, it was not as neat as Chenong. Luha smiled bitterly. "I've embarrassed myself in front of you." He was extremely ashamed. He was also a little angry at this junior brother who had tolerated him in every way. The triangular-eyed man was called Puda. He had a miserable life since he was a child. Luha didn't care about him because of the relationship between him and his master. Today, when he saw that Puda had humiliated his master, he decided to punish him. Copper Coconut Island had strict rules, so he could only do this. After they left, Luha took Chenong to a guest room to rest. Ling Sha waited on the side. After Luha left, she complained to Chenong. "That person is so rude. Teacher, I see that the atmosphere in Copper Coconut Island is quite simple. Why is there such a person here? His mana is mixed. Tomorrow, I'll ask him for guidance and make him pay back his face." Chenong waved his hand and smiled. "There's no need to do this. Tianchi is very strict in the sect. How can he let his disciple embarrass him? Also, Tianchi is very protective. If you take revenge, it will make him want to rebel. It's better to let him deal with it himself. If there's anything wrong, I'll make it up to him." Chenong gave her some homework and then let her go. He shrunk the golden ship of good fortune to the size of a finger. He secretly resonated with the magnetic force of the magnetic mountain and started to understand the mysteries of the magnetic force. Any treasure made of 5 metals would not be able to survive the magnetic force of the North and South Yin and Yang magnetic force. Among the immortals, there were only 3 to 5 things that were not afraid of being absorbed. However, Chenong's golden ship of fate was not among them because of its heavy metal quality. Chenong had to complete the primary magnetic prohibition so that the golden ship of fate would not be afraid of being restrained and would become even more powerful. Chapter 472. Early the next morning, Luha suddenly paid a visit alone. Chenong could tell that he wanted to apologize for what happened earlier, so he invited him in. Sure enough, Luha used his transcendence energy to gather 10 copper coconut sprouts and gave them to Chenong, saying, "Earlier, it was my fault for not disciplining them properly and neglecting fellow Taoist. Previously, when I received fellow Taoist help, I was already uneasy. Yesterday, I even offended you. I'm truly ashamed. Please forgive me. He was about to cut out when Chan Ong hurriedly said, I don't dare to offend you. Lu has said, I planted these 10 copper coconut sprouts a long time ago. They're only 100 years old and can't be of much use. Originally, they were more than that, but the island's copper coconut plants were loved by my teacher, so I didn't dare to monopolize them. These 10 copper coconut sprouts are my apology gift to you. I hope you won't blame me. When Chunong heard this, he knew that the way he looked at Tongyi yesterday, as well as his fondness for the coconut juice, were all seen by him. Seeing how humble and peaceful he was, Chunong knew that he was a person worth befriending, so he naturally wouldn't blame him. He smiled and said, Fellow Taoist, I will accept your kindness, but I don't dare to agree with your apology. I'm friends with you. It has nothing to do with others. Of course, Chunong had to say that. If he accepted Lu He's apology, wouldn't he have to talk about seniority with the people of Copper Coconut Island? Tianchi wasn't good enough to be Chun Ang's martial uncle, so it was better to be friends with each other. Then he heard Lu has said, Yesterday Shifu and I reported fellow Taoist Chen's arrival. When Shifu heard it, he was very concerned about fellow Taoist Chen's arrival. I wonder if fellow Taoist Chen would be willing to meet him? Chunong did not refuse, so he arranged a banquet for the evening and invited Chunong and the others. Chunong thought about it and knew that he couldn't be below Tianchi, so he wanted to show some of his abilities so that Tianchi wouldn't dare mess up their seniority. Otherwise, if Tianchi kept calling him his martial nephew, wouldn't Chunong be at a disadvantage? He thought to himself, my celestial river magic power has already gathered 2 types of true water. I'm afraid that he won't be able to see through the profoundness within and take advantage of me. It's better to reveal some things again. He was also curious about the magnetic mana that Lu Ha cultivated. In the world of Shushan, the 2 poles of true magnetism were separated by 10,936,365 miles. The energy was chaotic, and neither immortals nor mortals could have it. Moreover, it was connected to the heavenly pillar and the earthly dimension, and was supported by the universe. Its mysteriousness was definitely not below that of the vast Milky Way. Although he didn't have sect Master Chen's arts, he couldn't enter the most profound 3 pure deity arts of this world, the true teachings of the Gautama Buddha. However, it was not inferior to the innate 5 elemental Dharma power in the Tai Yin and Tai Yang heavens. In Chenang's opinion, it was very promising. Unfortunately, Tianchi had his own inheritances, and studying the magnetic energies was very complicated. Chunong wanted to use Tianchi's experience to help him understand the magnetic energies, but he couldn't create a new foundation. Chunong wanted to use Tianchi's experience to help him understand the magnetic energies. However, the prerequisite was that Chun Ang's understanding of the magnetic energies was not below Tianchi's. Only then could he exchange his experiences. Originally, it would have been best to create a magical treasure with magnetic energies, like the 2 poles of the universe disk. I could use it to verify what I've learned and put into practice. Unfortunately, I've used up all the divine magnetic iron tools, and the other materials are rare. I have to go to the 2 poles of the universe divine magnetic mountain to find them. I can only use the origin magnetic aura chi here to practice one of the magical powers of this world. What Chun Ong wanted to practice was one of the 2 most widely practiced magical powers in Shushan. Those bald donkeys were the best at this. Which of them didn't have a Buddha's light magical power? In the Xianmen, it was known as the divine light. It was considered a common spiritual art in the Xianmen. Loose immortals knew a few of them, but when they reached the level of the 6 freaks of the universe, or even the celestial immortals, they would have endless power. For example, the Taiyin divine light of destruction, the great 5 elemental divine light of destruction, the ice soul divine light, the red corpse 7 evils divine light, the innate separation divine light, the sandalwood Buddha light, the being and formless protection divine light, the Taiyin netherworld divine light, the great thunder divine light, and the blood shadow divine light. which was the reason why the Blood God Sutra was so powerful. It was the best magical power in Shu Mountain. In Shu Mountain, the magical power could be divided into 6 categories: thunder, water, fire, light, sound, and chi. Most of the magical power didn't belong to the 6 categories, and most of them were secret techniques. Now, Chunang's water magical power was one of the strongest in the world. He was also very proficient in fire and thunder magical power. As for the remaining 3 magical powers, he was just a beginner and wasn't very good at them. And what Chunang wanted to practice now was the easiest magical power of the Divine Light. It was called the Metamagnet Divine Light. It was probably because the force of Metamagnet was shapeless and incorporeal, and its nature was close to the light magical power. That was why it was suitable to be cultivated in the Divine Light, and it had the power of absorption. It was more convenient than the other true meanings of tranquility, the penetrating chill, and the evil will of the Blood God. At this moment, Chunang was using his primordial spirit to absorb the North Pole true magnetic force under the thousands of feet of the Earth vein. He derived 2 magical powers of the Metamagnet Divine Light. Both were extremely powerful, and even the Sky Immortals couldn't handle them. He wasn't afraid that Tianqi would look down on them. However, it was difficult to choose between the Meridian Magnetic Light and the Yin-Yang Magnetic Light. After thinking about it, he realized that although the Meridian Magnetic Light could be used with the 12 Seasons Waterscape Sword to add another layer of magical power, he only had half a day's time after all. He didn't have the time to refine the Meridian Magnetic Light in such a short time. Only the Yin-Yang Magnetic Light was specialized in one kind, and he had the special magical power of Yin and Yang to supplement it. In addition, the North Pole Magnetic Light was close to the Yin attribute, and Chunang had the help of the Taiyin True Water. So, he could practice in half a day, and it was quite powerful. Then he used the Milky Way Dharma power to swallow the pure magnetic aura and refine it into a thin layer of magical light. Then, he used the Taiyin True Water to refine it into a wisp of extremely Yin and extremely soft Metamagnet Divine Light that contained the power of swallowing. He kept it in his left eye. Like this, he kept it in an endless stream. After a few hours, he refined a wisp of magical light that was as thick as a thumb. It was the Taiyin Metamagnet Divine Light, and its power was not to be underestimated. Time passed quickly. Not long after, Luha knocked on the restriction of the place where Chunang was cultivating in seclusion and invited him to attend the banquet. Tianqi's cave abode was under the Metamagnet Divine Mountain. The place where he received his guests was a round stone room that was 100 feet wide. From the top to the ground, it was more than 200 feet high and about 10 acres wide. The 4 walls were as smooth as jade, and there were dozens of doors on the walls. There were 8 jade brushes that were as thick as teacups and about 10 feet long hanging from the ceiling. The tips of the brushes were burning with an olive-shaped silver light, which brightened the whole room. This cave abode was not bad, and it was not bad for that person to come. However, the 9 Bends Yellow River Formation in Chunang's sleeve was still holding the Purple Cloud Palace's 9-story Pearl Jade Palace. How could he be moved? Seeing him talking and laughing as usual, Luha secretly admired his profound ability to maintain his composure. When the 2 of them entered the cave abode, they saw a thin, old man with a long beard sitting cross-legged on the main seat. He didn't look like a monk or a Taoist. It was Tianqi. His eyes were half closed, but when Chunang came in, he suddenly opened them and looked carefully. When he saw Chunang clearly, he waved his right sleeve and took the jade stool to his side, sitting on the main seat with Chunang. Chapter 473. No matter how strong you were, you couldn't cover up your traces. Tianqi thought that Chunang was just a young man, and because he had offended Chunang first, Tianqi thought that Chunang was just a young man. He was proud, and he cared about his reputation the most. He wanted to punish Chunang in front of Chunang, and he wanted to show that he was an elder of Chunang's sect. Unexpectedly, as soon as he saw Chunang, the Taiyi magnetic pure qi in Chunang's body reacted, and he understood some details about Chunang. The magnetic supernatural power was divided into Yin and Yang. The North Pole magnetic pure baleful chi was yin, and the South Pole magnetic true dipper was yang. The magnetic essence energy under Copper Coconut Island was a branch of the North Pole magnetic true dipper. Therefore, it was also of the pure yin attribute, and was called the extreme yin magnetic force. Chun Ong had combined the North Pole pure chi and the Tai pure water, so his Tai magnetic force was even purer than Tian Chi's. Therefore, as soon as they met, they sensed the Tai magnetic force in their bodies repulsed each other, so they knew a little bit about each other. Even though his Tai magnetic force is a little weak, it's purer than mine, and his magic power is not weaker than mine. He and Lu He are in the same generation, but how can I call myself an elder of Chenong? If news of this were spread, wouldn't I be laughed at by my fellow cultivators from overseas? Thinking of this, Taoist Tian Chi moved Chun Ong to his side. Tian Chi's metamagnet godly light was called the Tai metamagnet godly light. Even though it was the same as Chun Ang's Tai metamagnet godly light, it didn't have the properties of yin and yang. Since it couldn't coexist with the magnetic field of the South Pole Sun, it couldn't cultivate the great supernatural power of the yin-yang divine light of magnetism. Therefore, it didn't deserve the name Extreme Yin. His extreme yin divine thunder, on the other hand, could be said to live up to its name because it could gather and disperse at will, seeking its own yang attribute. He was aware of this as well. This was related to the purification of his magnetic magical power. He had gone into seclusion several times in an attempt to purify his magical power, but to no avail. Seeing Chun Ong sit down next to him, he asked, "Where is Puda?" Lu He, who was sitting next to him, answered, "11th Martial Brother is waiting outside." Tian Chi Shangren sneered, "You have followed me for many years. Have you ever seen anyone make me lose face like this?" He heard everyone in the hall say in fear, "No." Puda Martial Brother was confused for a moment. Tian Chi, the exalted being, said coldly, "Bastard, he's jealous of Senior Brother, neglecting our esteemed guest, and insulting our Copper Coconut Island's reputation. How can we let him off lightly? Puda has always been narrow-minded and can't stand it. It's fine if you guys give in to him. Now, you actually dare to betray your fellow disciples. Won't you all kill each other in the future? Even if I die 100 times, it won't be enough." Puda, who was kneeling on the ground, trembled. He fell to the ground and begged, "Master, please spare my life." Tian Chi, the exalted being, looked at him coldly, then glanced at Chun Ong. Chun Ong smiled. He knew what he meant. Tian Chi, the exalted being, didn't want to do this. After all, Puda had only made a small mistake. He just wanted to teach him a lesson. In the future, if he didn't change his mind, Tian Chi, the exalted being, would be even more ruthless. However, Chenang's position was very high. He was no lower than Tian Chi, the exalted being, so Puda had offended Chun Ong even more. After all, there was a big difference between offending someone of the same generation and offending someone of the same generation. Chun Ong hiding his real power made Tian Chi, the exalted being, even more rebellious. He felt that he had lost face because of Chun Ong, so he had done this to show Chun Ong. If Chun Ong knew what was good for him, he would give in to him and help him regain his lost face. That would be great. If Chun Ong didn't give in, they would become enemies. It was easy to solve this matter. Chun Ong would ask him for a favor and take responsibility for some of his own mistakes. He would ask him to push the boat along the current and let the matter pass. After that, he would be punished a little and would naturally be happy and harmonious. But why would Chun Ong give in to him? Most cultivators were like nice people. They didn't want to lose face because of trivial things. Therefore, even if they lost face, they had to take care of Tian Chi's feelings. But for cultivators like Chun Ong, was Tian Chi's friendship worth losing face? Didn't Niwa destroy the Shang dynasty? She became a god and destroyed the world? Chun Ong laughed and said, "Tian Chi, my friend, you're too." He didn't finish his sentence. He lowered his head and started drinking tea. Tian Chi didn't know what to say. Chun Ong didn't know what was good for him, and had even seen through him. Tian Chi couldn't keep his face. He shouted, "Take this bastard away and whip him 500 times." Puda was dragged away and whipped loudly outside the hall. Chun Ong had humiliated Tian Chi, but he couldn't do anything about it. When he talked to Chenong again, his word became more aggressive. Lu He was in an awkward situation. Tianqi wanted to find a chance to attack him, but Chenong always stopped him. After such a long time, his heart was filled with anger. So he decided to just ignore it and forcefully said, "In the 4 Cs, I'm the only one who cultivates in magnetism magic power. The other cultivators with magnetism magic power either live in seclusion at the 2 poles or establish their own mansions on the axis of the earth, so it's not convenient for me to ask for guidance. Now, Chun Daoyu, a handsome cultivator from the Central Plains, also cultivates the magnetic element. I'd like to ask you to help me." Without waiting for Chenong to refuse, he released the cave residence's restriction and released the magnetic mountain suction force. Tianqi flew away and landed on the top of the mountain. This mountain was connected to the Copper Coconut Island's Earth core magnetic field, which was created by Tianqi himself. It turned out that this place was a huge swamp, a place where tens of thousands of years of filth had accumulated. The mud in the swamp belonged to the Yin magnetic field, and it moved along with the magnetic force. It contained a little bit of power, which was attracted by the North Pole magnetic field. It was extremely heavy, and anyone who was caught by it would find it hard to escape. If it was an ordinary cultivator, they would at most refine a sinister treasure and scatter it into a swamp, pester people, collect the treasure, and trap their enemies. However, Tianqi had created a mountain that was as tall as the clouds. It contained the essence of the North Pole true magnetic field. It could absorb gold and iron. It was very convenient to absorb people and things. It was Tianqi's home ground. He didn't have good intentions in choosing this place. He wanted to humiliate Chenong. Chenong seemed like he couldn't refuse, so he took out the 12 Yuanchun waterscape swords. Rings of light flashed, and 12 moon-like sword lights surrounded the mountain. They were even more powerful than the 49 divine wood swords that Tianqi had taken out. Chapter 474. Lu He recognized that it was the sword Chenong had used the day before. He didn't know what kind of sword it was, but he knew that since it was watercolored and wasn't affected by the magnetic force, it must be something like 10,000-year-old ice. He envied Chen Daoyu and said, "Chen Daoyu is so lucky. He has a flying sword that isn't affected by the magnetic force. Even though our Tai godly wood swords are spiritual, they aren't sharp enough to be considered high-class flying swords. Even the 49 10,000-year divine wood swords that master uses are just low-class flying swords. They are not as sharp as fellow Taoist Chen's sword aura, and they are not as powerful as his. Master, you mean that Chun Daoyu has mastered the magnetic force as well? I don't know how strong he is, but I'm sure he's much stronger than me." Not only him, even Tianqi couldn't help but raise his eyebrows when he saw Chunang's sword light. He looked serious. Tianqi's eyes were much sharper than Lu He's. He could tell that even though the shape of the sword had changed, it was still made of metal. To be able to refine metal into such a shape, it had to be extremely powerful. Tianqi had only heard of one flying sword with such a high quality. That was the Nanmingli fire sword that Patriarch Bodhidharma had used to kill demons and beasts. Even though the Amei sect's purple and green twin swords were powerful, they didn't belong to the Nanmingli fire sword. The Nanmingli fire sword was made of fire. It didn't have the same shape as the Nanmingli fire sword, but it was made of metal. It was extremely sharp and pure like fire. Even though Chunang's sword wasn't as powerful as the Nanmingli fire sword, it was like water. Tianqi thought, even though this sword is powerful, it's not one of the few treasures in the world that aren't affected by the magnetic force. If I use my full power, he won't be able to resist it. He also cultivates the magnetic force. How could he not know that? Even though Tianqi was confused, he didn't retreat. Tianqi made the 49 godly wood swords turn into many cyan sword lights. He was also a master of swordsmanship. The 49 sword lights were released at the same time. Instead of being chaotic, they worked together and formed a net made of godly wood swords. He did not rely on the sharpness of the flying sword. He only used his skillful swordsmanship. The momentum of the sword was heavy and strong, carrying a vigorous mana. It squeezed the space where Chun-Ong moved his sword. With this swordsmanship, he could be considered as one of the top experts in the sea. It did not disgrace his great reputation. Such a spectacular display. It attracted the cheers of the spectating disciples. Chun-Ong waited for him to make his move and only responded normally. It was only when the divine wood sword net was set up that he let out a clear shout and pointed his finger. Only then did the 12 primordial stars split into a circle and transformed into 100 zhang long silver rainbow. It swept across the sky, and with the sharpness of the flying sword itself, it tore the sword net into pieces. He had only used a little of his swordsmanship to defeat Tianqi, but he had managed to defeat Tianqi. Tianqi tried to defend himself. His 49 godly wood swords were being bullied like children. Even though he tried to defend himself, he couldn't. He was humiliated in front of all the disciples. He shouted, "Chun Daoyou's swordsmanship is powerful, but we are competing with the magnetic force. Watch my spells." As soon as he finished speaking, he shrugged his back and grabbed at the void with his hand. Dozens of balls of lunar metamagnet divine lightning shot out. Suddenly, smoke and light shone for thousands of miles, illuminating the lone peak. The sound of wind and thunder shook the earth. The metamagnet divine lightning exploded in the air, shocking Chun-Ang's protective sword circle to the point that it fluctuated and became a little messy. Tianqi was happy. The lunar magnetic thunderbolts could be released and condensed at will. If his opponent couldn't defeat them, his body and soul would be destroyed. But if it met with a metal treasure, it could be absorbed by the lunar magnetic pure qi. Now that the lunar magnetic thunderbolts had exploded and turned into Tai magnetic pure qi, it must have stopped Chun-Ang's swords. Tianqi of the lunar magnetic pure qi started to attack again. Origin magnetic true qi was formless and incorporeal, only a stagnant force. Logically speaking, if Chun-Ong wanted to use it freely again, he would have to refine his flying swords. But Chun-Ong used his Milky Way Dharma power. The 12 yuan Fun Tianqi of the 12 yuan Fun Tianqi of the Milky Way Dharma power turned into 6 beams of sword light. They were invisible and invisible. The lunar magnetic pure qi couldn't absorb them. The 6 beams of sword light turned into 1. Tianqi of the lunar magnetic pure qi couldn't block them. They were all torn apart by the sword light. Tianqi of the lunar magnetic mountain didn't even have time to summon the magnetic mountain divine light. Chun-Ang's sword light touched his throat, and he was defeated. Apart from Tianqi, nobody could see through Chun-Ang's sword lights. Even so, Tianqi was so furious that he almost fainted. Chun-Ang's sword lights were like a thunderbolt, like a raging ocean. Apart from Tianqi, nobody could see through them. Without holding back, the magnetic essence qi on the magnetic peak transformed into a greenish-white qi and enveloped Chun-Ong. Then, he raised his hand and a beam of magnetic divine light flew into the air. With the help of the magnetic essence qi from the magnetic peak, it immediately expanded to the size of an acre. It shone with a golden light that was so dazzling that it was difficult to open one's eyes. Wherever the magnetic light went, the fine iron would lose control and be absorbed by it. Esteemed Tianqi wanted to capture Chun-Ang's 12 water sword lights and suppress them under the magnetic mountains. But unexpectedly, when the magnetic light shone on the waterscape sword, not only did he not feel the suction force, but he also borrowed the force to speed up. As he leaped forward, the sword light could no longer be seen. He only felt a chill on his forehead and reached out to touch it, only to find that his right eyebrow had been kicked off. When Tianqi saw his eyebrows droop down, he shouted furiously. He was furious. He had nowhere to vent his anger. He hated Chun-Ong to the core. He activated the magnetic mountain and released a large amount of pure magnetic qi, which fused with his pure magnetic godly light. He had spent a lot of time and effort on the island to activate the strongest defensive spell he had ever created, the pure magnetic great deployment spell. The divine light and the primary magnetic essence qi on the peak of the magnetic peak turned into a 5-color divine light, covering everything within a radius of 40 to 50 miles. Starting from the magnetic peak, it shot down diagonally and connected to the ground in all directions, forming a five-colored smoke screen that enveloped Chun-Ong within. The five-colored smoke screen was shrinking inwards, trying to pull Chun-Ong into it. The divine light of primordial magnetism was inside. No matter how powerful one's supernatural power was, one could not break through this invisible and intangible power. Relying on the absorption power of the true magnetic earth veins of the North Pole, the golden ship of fate and the gold and iron magical treasures in Chun-Ang's dantian trembled violently, almost breaking out of his body. Chun-Ong let out a long laugh. The Nine Bends Yellow River Grand Formation in his sleeve unfolded, suppressing his body. The 12 primordial waterscape swords suddenly merged into one, transforming into a ring of light between real and fake, between existence and non-existence. With a casual wave of his hand, it enveloped the entire copper coconut island. He shouted, "Life and death between existence and non-existence. 12 primordial stars as one day." The 12 swords formed a mysterious spell formation which divided the area within a radius of 1,000 miles into two different worlds. Chun-Ong stood outside the two worlds. It seemed like the whole world was in his swords. With a flick of his finger, a speck of metamagnet divine light fell into the circle of sword light, absorbing and suppressing the endless five-colored mist. Then, the extreme metamagnet divine light suddenly swallowed the endless metamagnet divine light, as if it had eaten too much, and returned to Chun-Ang's dantian to digest. Only then did Chun-Ong let go of the sword light. Only then did the world within 1,000 Li suddenly return to normal. The disciples of the Copper Coconut Island looked confused. Only Tianchi Esteem's face was pale, and he gave up resisting. Chun-Ong smiled and said, "Tianchi Esteem's cultivation is profound. I have learned a lot from this competition. However, if we continue, it will hurt our friendship. How about we stop now? What do you think?" Tianchi Esteem's lips moved. After a long while, he replied calmly, "Just as you said." He had been defeated by Chun-Ong, and his arrogance had been destroyed. He didn't dare to provoke Chun-Ong anymore. Chun-Ang's method of training was very rough. It was not as good as the spring breeze and rain of Mount Amei. Chun-Ong just wanted to destroy Tianchi Esteem's arrogance with a tyrannical method. Chun-Ang's arrogance had been deeply imprinted in Tianchi Esteem's mind. If he didn't do this well, he would become Tianchi Esteem's enemy. Chun-Ong was very brave, and that was why he had dared to torture Tianchi Esteemed like that. It seemed like the result was good. At least Tianchi Esteemed felt that he was one generation lower in front of Chun-Ong. It was a psychological bottom line. Everyone had a different psychological bottom line. For example, colleagues had a higher self-esteem than their leaders. If they scolded their colleagues, they would turn against them, but if their leaders scolded them, they would be submissive. Chun-Ong had crossed Tianchi's bottom line many times, which made Tianchi lower his bottom line. Many things that he couldn't accept before. Now that their positions had changed, he could understand them. Chapter 475. The disciples on the island understood what was going on. They didn't dare underestimate Chun-Ong anymore. Even though Tianchi was in Copper Coconut Island, he had seen how terrifying Chun-Ang's sword had been, so he didn't think that Chun-Ong couldn't defeat him. Tianchi glanced at the disciples and went back to the cave. He even moved Chun-Ong to the left to show his respect. At that moment, Pooh had already come back. Two disciples dragged him to Tianchi. He didn't dare argue with Tianchi, so he just stared at Chun-Ong. Like I didn't know how to hide it. Everybody could see that. Pooh hadn't seen the fight between Tianchi and Chun-Ong because he had been tortured. The other disciples who had seen the fight sighed in their hearts. Chun-Ong had brought about his own destruction. Because he didn't have good relationships with people, no one went to remind him at this time, and he was left to deal with the calamity. As expected, Tianchi smiled coldly and told his subordinates to hold him down. If he didn't repent in the future, he would be sent back to the reincarnation cycle. The atmosphere in the palace became warmer and warmer. The atmosphere in the palace warmed up. Chunong smiled and said, Tianchi, my friend, I've been amazed by your power. You can gather and disperse the Taiyin magnetic force at your will. The Xiantian magnetic force formation is a whole new world. I admire you a lot. I regret that I didn't meet you earlier. Chunong was just being polite. Tianchi didn't take his words seriously, but the two of them were fighting because of face. Now that Chunong was giving him face, Tianchi was a bit disappointed. He knew that Chunong was 10 times stronger than him, so he couldn't get back at him in the future. Therefore, they decided to let bygones be bygones. Tianchi bowed and said, Chen Daoyu, what are you talking about? I can use the North Pole cosmic magnetic field to cultivate, but my lunar magnetic field is not pure. Only by raising the essence chi of the clouds and gathering the power of the Tai heavenly thunder can one cultivate the divine light, but it has no Taiyin quality and is extremely heterogeneous. Therefore, it can only be named the Tai divine light of magnetism. How can fellow Taoists cultivate the wonders of the Taiyin divine light alone without any geographical advantage? Chunong smiled faintly and said, Cultivators of Taoism have the right to communicate with each other. As the ancient people said, wealth, law, land, and companionship are the most important things. Since Tianchi has addressed me as fellow Taoist, I don't dare to be stingy. Tianchi heard that Chunong wanted to learn from his sect. He was a bit angry, but he didn't dare to show it. He explained, My sect's magnetic Tao was created by studying the magnetic, pure, evil aura. Because the magnetic Tao is a branch of the North Pole, it doesn't have two magnetic poles. It's affected by the chi of the earth, so it's not pure. I need the magnetic mountain to help me. Chunong had other thoughts after listening to his words. He asked in reply, Fellow Taoist, if your primordial magnetic mana is successful, you must borrow the primordial magnetic malevolent chi of the North and South Poles to temper yourself. If you don't have a treasure that can restrain the primordial yin and primordial magnetic genuine chi of the sun, it would be difficult for you to succeed. I only know of one such treasure, and it is the cosmic light plate hidden in the jade cliff of Amei. This treasure is related to the establishment of the extraterrestrial divine mountain of Amei in the future. Tianchi smiled bitterly and said, The path of cultivation is difficult. That's all. Chunong, on the other hand, thought of his own magnetic golden ship of fate. If this treasure was completed, the North and South Poles would be as easy as walking on flat ground. But before it was completed, he could go to the stars beyond the heavens, but he could not get close to the magnetic land of two poles. This treasure was made of a huge amount of refined iron. Before the yin and yang magnetic divine thunderball of fate reached the 36th layer, it would also be restrained. Originally, the restrictive spell had to reach the 54th layer. The lunar and solar magnetic pure evil aura in the yin and yang magnetic divine thunderball had to be combined to form the Tai Chi magnetic pure evil aura. Only then could the magnetic pure evil aura break through the magnetic pure evil aura and travel between the two poles. But the lunar and solar magnetic pure evil aura was the best place to cultivate. Otherwise, it would take a long time. Chunong, on the other hand, was confident that with his own magic power, he would be able to force his way through the magnetic field and enter the divine sand of the South Pole. But now, the golden boat only had 22 layers. He didn't know how long it would take. If he could get Tianchi's help, he could use the magnetic mountain to suppress the magnetic pure evil aura. Then he would be able to cultivate it in the yin and yang magnetic divine thunderball. When he thought that, he secretly told Tianchi a few things. He told him about how to use the magnetic energy to reach the Taiyin level. Tianchi immediately felt refreshed. He looked at the information with his soul, as if he had just received a priceless treasure. When he talked to Chunong, he became absent-minded from time to time. He studied the magnetic treasure, and, as expected, he improved a lot. He forgot about his grudge against Chunong and started to ask Chunong questions. Chunong took the opportunity to ask Tianchi some questions. Tianchi had been studying the magnetic Tao for hundreds of years. Even though he wasn't as knowledgeable as Chunong, he still had a lot of experience. The two of them let down their guard and started to talk to each other. The less experienced disciples had already left. Only Tianqi's disciples, like Lu He, who Tianqi thought highly of, could stay and listen. They all learned a lot from each other. Some of the disciples even improved a lot. Tianqi could see that Chenong really wasn't trying to steal their legacy. They were just talking, and Chenong was even more generous. He answered all the questions he asked, which made him seem like a stingy person. Chenong didn't ask any more questions, but Chenong didn't ask any more questions. He felt ashamed and thought, Chen Daoyu is from the mystic door. He understands the magnetic Dao much better than I do. He knows a lot about the magnetic Dao. How could he not have any powerful techniques? How could he be interested in my treasures? I'm still fussing over a small thing like that. That's not right. He didn't know that because of Chun Ang's complicated background, everything he had learned and comprehended had to be organized into a system. His skeleton was perfect, and the key was there. It was just that he lacked flesh and blood to fill it up. Therefore, the key tricks that he cherished were useless to Chunong. Instead, it was the words of experience and subtle understanding that could provide Chunong with data to fill his flesh and blood. Therefore, Chunong was happy to see it and didn't care about his concealment. This time, Chunong had truly convinced this overseas itinerant immortal. In this way, there were many things that could be discussed in depth. Chunong pondered for a moment, then smiled and said, I have the same thoughts as fellow Taoist. The land of the two poles of the true magnetic field is of great importance to people of the magnetic essence like us. We must borrow the strength of our fellow Taoist for this. I see that fellow Taoist has the same idea as me. In order to break the two extremities magnetic baleful stars, I have refined a precious treasure. I hope fellow Taoist can help me. After that, he took out the golden boat. The golden boat was floating in the air. Its two wings were shining with golden lights. Tianqi sensed that the golden boat was releasing an incredible magnetic strength, which wasn't restricted by his magnetic mountains. He looked at it carefully and realized that the golden boat contained an incredible magnetic strength. Chun Ong wasn't lying when he said that it was a treasure that could help him travel between the two Jinchi realms. Chapter 476. Chun Ong released the restrictive spells on the golden boat so that Tianqi could see what was going on inside. Tianqi was shocked. He thought, luckily, Chun Daoyu didn't want to make things difficult for me. He only used his sword skills to defeat me. Instead, it is my heart that is not in the right, and my actions are too extreme. If he were to use this magic treasure to counter me, even if I have the innate magnetic grand formation, how can it be a flying magic treasure? The Xiantian magnetic formation can control yin and yang. Even I know that the Xiantian magnetic formation is connected to the Xiantian magnetic formation. Chun Daoyu's treasure has many powerful lightning spells. If he used them all at once, the entire Copper Coconut Island would turn into a sea of fire. No matter how big my house is, I wouldn't be able to survive. He didn't have any scruples anymore. He asked, I'm not strong enough to help you make the treasure stronger. What do you want? If Tianqi can help you, I'll do my best. Chenong laughed and said, This is not difficult. I won't make it difficult for you. Every 129,600 years, there will be a great calamity in the world. Although it won't bring the world into chaos and return to the primordial world, it can still cause tsunamis and landslides within thousands of miles. Floods will flow, fiendish flames will soar into the sky and turn it into a sea of fire. I'm sure that the next minor Yuan tribulation will occur under your Taoist cave abode, and the consequences will be severe. I have obtained the fate of the four seas, so I have to worry about the tribulation sent by the heavens. At this time, the tribulation has not happened, and the days have long been set. In the future, it will be related to the prosperity of Amei. Although I could have eliminated the matter of Ishio attaining the Tao a long time ago, I have to take into account the karma of the same path and the calculations of the senior, so I can't trigger this tribulation in advance. When Tianqi heard this, his primordial spirit was alerted. Even though he didn't know how to predict the future, with Chun Ang's help, he was able to see what Chenong was saying. He was shocked and said, "I know what's going on under the island. The magnetic mountain is pressing down on the ground, so people can't escape. Who would have thought that there would be such a disaster? If you know that, why did you leave me and my disciple here? It's better to get rid of them." Chun-Ong hesitated for a moment before he shook his head and said, previously when Long Browshenrin was still alive, he had already foreseen the impending doom. For this reason, he had worshipped the green seal and prayed silently to the way of heaven for 49 days. He had made a great vow and bequeathed to the disciples of Amei to encourage them to shoulder the heavy responsibility of this calamity. Moreover, the heavenly Tao had its own rules. Before the time came, there would definitely be a calamity when the tribulation began. The minor Yuan tribulation is different from the others. It is a tribulation of time and has its own timing. It can only be triggered and eliminated, not suppressed. Tianqi said angrily, "Why didn't the Amei sect tell me about this? They must be plotting against us, master and disciple. They want me to be the one to open the tribulation and cheat me of my hard work. They want me to be in a difficult situation, and I might even have to lower my head to them. How hateful." Chun-Ong didn't take his words seriously. From Tianqi's point of view, Amei had gained a lot of external merit points and a favor. Chun-Ong had gained nothing, but he had to accept Amei's favor. How could they do that? But from objective point of view, Long Browshenrin had foreseen the external merit points. So why should he have a share? Amei, Guang Chengzi, and many others had to return the external merit points. How could they be so kind as to share it with him? The Amei sect was a righteous sect of the mystic door, but it wasn't a charity. They had saved him once because they were on the same path. How could they think of anything else? Chun-Ong had also taken the external merit points from Amei. If he didn't care about the cause and effect, and wanted to take all the external merit points, it would be too much. Besides, he always liked to do good deeds. He knew how to be a good person. How could he agree with Tianqi here? In this tribulation, the formation of the Yellow River of 9 Tunes might not be able to turn misfortune into fortune like your island did. There were many great formations in this realm that gathered the essence of the Great Way and had the ability to suppress fate energy. The Yin and Yang dust formation could suppress the fate energy of Mount Amei and lead the Central Land. The formation of the Yellow River of 9 Tunes could regulate the sea eye of the 4 poles and suppress fate energy overseas. However, the fate energy of this tribulation was at the 2 poles. Chun-Ong had to deduce and perfect the real innate magnetic formation to suppress the fate energy of the 2 poles. The primordial magnetic formation couldn't be compared to the 9-turn Yellow River formation. It wasn't the way of true water-sky river. Chun-Ong only knew a little about the way of magnetism and was far from mastering it. He was far from being able to use the primordial magnetic formation to suppress the north and south poles, combine the Earth's axis, mix yin and yang, and adjust the evil spirits. With this in mind, Chun-Ong just smiled and said, "That's all for later. My golden ship is made of thunder, fire, and magnetism. My friend, please control the magnetic peak and help me suppress the golden ship of good fortune into the Earth's lungs. With the help of the Earth's fire, poisonous wind, and magnetic field, the ship's restrictions can be tempered. When it reaches the 36th layer, it can choose an opportunity to escape to the 2 poles." Tianqi thought for a long time and then rejected. "My friend, how can I dare to leave the island? Am I not afraid that when I come back from the 2 poles, the Earth's fire will explode and kill my sect? Shindayu, I will help you. I just want to thank you for your advice. I will guard the Earth's lungs on the magnetic peak and not let anyone trigger it." Chun-Ong smiled and said, "My friend, you don't have to do this. I naturally have a way to make you feel at ease." He pointed at the towering magnetic peak outside the cave abode and said with a smile, "My friend, do you remember the formation you used in the last battle? I will help you perfect this formation and refine this magnetic peak into a supreme treasure like the jadeite cliff. I will also release a little of the accumulated power in the underground so that you'll be able to suppress it. If you still don't feel at ease, I can entrust your disciple to guard it." Tianqi was overjoyed when he heard this. If he could get Chun'ang's help to perfect the innate magnetism formation and refine the magnetic peak into the formation map, he would really have nothing to worry about anymore. He would be able to obtain a supreme treasure that could suppress fate and make the Copper Coconut Island's fate even more lasting. After the two of them came to a decision, they asked Chun'ang to move to the entrance of the magnetic peak. They showed the formation map of the magnetic peak to Chun'ang and told him where the entrance of the Earth's lungs was. The Taihua fire was hidden deep in the Earth's lungs and was separated by the ancient layers. It was unexpected and couldn't be predicted by ordinary divination. Even if a powerful cultivator tried to predict it, he wouldn't be able to predict it. There were 13 layers in the ancient layers. They were either as hard as steel or extremely hot. Each layer was harder than the previous one. Chun'ang used the golden boat to enter the Earth's lungs. He saw that the ground was very deep. First, there was a layer that was as hard as steel. The golden boat pushed aside the soil and rocks. With the help of Tianqi's magnetic peak, they soon reached the bottom of the magnetic peak and entered the Earth's lungs. After a few thousand feet, they arrived at the source of the poisonous fire in the Earth's lungs. The Earth's lungs were filled with Qi. There was a sea of lava under the Moon Island's volcano. There was also a sea of fire under the magnetic peak of the Copper Coconut Island, where there was water, fire, wind, and thunder. It was like an ancient world. Chun'ang knew that the Taihua fire was hidden deep in the Earth's lungs. He couldn't predict where it was unless the karma was going to erupt. Because of the magnetic peak above their heads, not only did the Taihua fire accumulate, but there was also a lot of Qi in the Earth's lungs. There were also many monsters hiding there. Water, fire, wind, and thunder were also forming ancient scenes. The first Yuan heavy water, one of the 7 kinds of pure water, was formed by Qi. One drop weighed 129,600 kilograms, which was exactly 1 yuan. That was why it was called the first Yuan heavy water. Chapter 477. Most of the reason why Chun'ang was willing to come down was because of the first Yuan heavy water. After all, no matter how rare the opportunity to refine the golden ship of fate's restrictions was, it was not as important as the improvement of Chun'ang's heavenly river-dermic powers. Under the crust of Copper Coconut Island, due to the magnetic peaks, all kinds of Yin and turbidity were concentrated. Other places did not have such good conditions. There were many holes in the lungs. Before the Yin and turbidity Qi condensed into boiling lava, it would turn into wind, thunder, water, and fire. Because there was a meandering magnetic vein, there were also many gigantic magnetic peaks that looked like floating islands and mountain ranges floating in the air. The underground nightmare wind shuttled between them. Because this wind was formed by the flow of heavy, turbid air, it was the most vicious and terrifying. Under the nightmare wind's caress, even a person made of metal would have their flesh and bones thinned and their bodies disintegrated. The Yin and Yang magnetism in the lungs was the most sensitive. Because it was trapped in a narrow space, it was the most sensitive. Any disturbance would destroy the fragile balance of the 2 poles and trigger the Yin thunderstorm. Chun'ang steered the golden ship of fate all the way forward, and no one knew how many Yin and Yang magnetic forces filled the lungs were disturbed. The violent Yin thunderstorm triggered the strong wind, and the wind and thunder were several times more terrifying. The bone-chilling wind mixed with the divine thunder that could destroy 100 miles away stirred the lungs of the earth into a terrifying world of dancing silver snakes and turbulent storms. However, the violent storms could not get within 3 feet of the golden light of the golden ship. Chun'ang, on the other hand, could seize the opportunity to absorb the essence of the mother wind in the wind, which was also an excellent material for crafting wind magic treasures. Meanwhile, the golden ship of fortune flapped its wings on its own. The 2 sun god fire wings were like a pair of huge thunder wings, absorbing a large amount of thunder essence from the Yin thunderstorm to nourish itself. The Yin and turbidity Qi accumulated in one place and condensed into the first Yuan water. This was something that Chun'ang had to get his hands on no matter what. Chun'ang took over the control of the innate magnetism grand formation and at the same time, he used the magnetic rays to search the 3,000 miles of underground lungs. It was as if he could see the sky and hear the earth, and the divine rays of magnetism were feeding back to him. In Chun Ang's eyes, the earth and rocks were like nothing. Only the spots where the dark and turbid gathered were blocked by clouds of different colors, and he could not see clearly. He saw that in the 3,000 miles of underground lungs, the strange insects were swimming in the air, and the evil beasts formed from the dark and turbid were also attacked by Chun Ang together. The three red-haired strange corpses in the lead had long manes, red faces, and fangs. They flew very quickly in the ground and turned into a poisonous smoke that sprayed towards Chun Ang. One of them was hiding in the poisonous smoke and emitted a phosphorescent fire. When it came into contact with a Taoist cultivator's body, it would turn into fire and burn the body. Only a treasure of true water could extinguish it. Chun Ang recognized these strange creatures. They were the zombies that cultivated in the soil for 100 years. Under the moon, they shed their stiff bodies and grew a body full of red hair. They were called flying yakshas. These evil beasts were the remains of cultivators that were born after being infected by the earth's turbidity. Their bodies were as hard as diamond, and they could escape through the earth and fly. They were originally one of the strongest transformations of the zombies. Seeing the three zombies covered in red hair, and the Yin-Chi penetrated deep into their bones, Meng-Chi knew that they were the best ones that were about to transform into the red-haired roar. Even the rogue immortals had to retreat, not to mention in the earth's turbidity. Even their lair was even more ferocious. The three flying yakshas were dressed in ancient clothes. They seemed to be people from the Shang and Zhou dynasties. They wore feathered clothes and star crowns. They looked like they were from ancient times. They spat out the Yin Dan they cultivated to attack Chun Ang. The Yin Dan was mixed with hundreds of phosphorescents. When each of them exploded, they exploded into Yin fire that was about an acre in size. However, they were all collected by the Nine Bends Yellow River Formation in his sleeve. The three flying yakshas were enraged after losing the inner Dan that they had worked hard for hundreds of years. This Yin Dan was the key to their transformation in the future. How could they let it go? They did not even bother to hide their bodies and pounce towards Chun Ang, relying on their body of diamond. They stretched out their huge claws to grab Chun Ang. If it were someone else here, they would not be able to do anything to their bodies that were comparable to magic weapons. However, they were courting death. They actually crashed into the golden ship of fate. Under the impact of the golden ship, no matter whether they were flying yakshas or red-haired roars, even a mountain would collapse. Chun Ang only felt the golden ship under his feet shake slightly. He saw a flying yaksha's bones and flesh turn into mud. The Yin fire in its stomach spurted out of its 7 orifices. In the blink of an eye, it was crushed into pieces. The other 2 escaped fast enough and were only brushed by the aftershock. Even so, most of their muscles and bones were broken. Chun Ang felt that they were useful, so he controlled the golden ship to suppress them. After killing these 3, the rest of the evil beasts did not pose a threat and scattered in panic. Chun Ang also found a Yin spring. He drove the golden ship to cut through the veins of the earth and collected more than 50 drops of first Yuan heavy water. When he wanted to search again, Tian-Chi on the ground became impatient and asked with his primordial spirit. Chun Ang had no choice but to run toward the Eye of Fire. He released the Nine Bends Yellow River Formation and connected the Yin rivers underground to prevent alarming the Tai fire. If there was an accident, he would have enough time to suppress it. At this moment, Chun Ang had already broken through 2 layers. One layer was as hard as steel and could only be restrained by Chun Ang's golden ship of good fortune. The other layer contained the remains of ancient creatures. They were all huge and ferocious. One could vaguely see the majestic bodies of ancient creatures. Even though they had been buried underground for a long time and had been eroded by the Yin Chi, there were countless phosphorus fires hidden in the white bones, which were controlled by the flying yaksha. In order to break through this layer, the slightest bit of movement would alarm the remains of the archaic creatures. At that time, countless phosphorescent flames would fly out like stars and explode together. It was likely that it could burn everything within 3,000 li and set off boundless flames. At the same time, it would trigger the chi of the ancient creatures. Chunong had the golden ship to protect him, so even though he was not afraid, it would still be very troublesome. He had to carefully break through this layer. The last layer was the boiling liquid of the earth lung, which was extremely hot. Chunong saw this and used his primordial spirit to peep at the secrets of heaven. He then found out that the earth heart fire I was in this layer about 50 miles below. However, the poisonous fire of the boiling liquid was very powerful. Later on, Ishio was trapped here and understood how to use fire to control fire. He almost released the earth heart fire eye and caused a disaster. Chunong steered the golden ship of fate and didn't need to worry about the heat of the boiling lava. After 50 miles, he could feel the heat pressing down. The pure white power of Tai Huang fire was boundless. The earth core fire, I nurtured countless essence of fire. The entire Tai Huang fire, I was like a wriggling fire dragon, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. Its wings were already formed, and a short horn vaguely appeared on its head. Chunong knew that the day the fire dragon turned into a dragon would be the day the Tai fire I would be born. Tianchi Hermit used the circular light technique to check through Chunong's hand. Seeing this, his face turned gloomy, and he said in a bad tone, "What a good earth lung Tai fire. It has already become a climate, and it is difficult for humans to control it." Chapter 478. It was not easy to suppress the explosive power of the Taihua. Tianchi esteemed would not be able to do it. Because of this, when he saw Chunong's strict arrangement, he realized his own shortcomings. Chunong looked at the Taihua Chi. It was like a dragon, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws like an evil dragon. It was a short horn on its head. Chunong knew that the Taihua Chi had already become a dragon. The Taihua Chi was naturally able to sense it. It knew that it would be a great sin when it was born, so it took the shape of a dragon and planned to become a dragon. If it escaped, the earth turbid Xian Yin Chi could transform and become a primordial flaming dragon. It could control heaven and earth and kill, and commit endless sins. Tianchi esteemed saw what Chunong saw through the round light spell, so he no longer doubted Chunong's words. These days, he had been practicing the magnetic peak day and night, drawing the hidden, pure, evil chi of magnetism to set up the inhibition. This was to prevent the Taihua dragon from escaping when Chunong attacked it in the future, which would lead to more sins. Chunong assisted him with the Yellow River of Nine Bends formation. After all the preparations were done, Chunong saw that the Taihua dragon had not opened its eyes. He knew that fate is on my side. If it was a little more sensitive, it would have sensed it, but it didn't, which meant that fate was not on its side. Seeing this, Chunong naturally would not let go of this opportunity. He controlled the North Pole magnetic evil spirit to project the essential magnetic chi onto the golden ship of fate. The colorful divine light of metamagnet gathered from the vast underground magnetic veins and was projected down from the top of the magnetic peak, shining directly on the divine fire wings of the golden ship of fate. The pure golden wings produced a huge devouring force out of nowhere, swallowing the divine light of metamagnet and transferring it to the yin and yang creation divine thunderball. The yin and yang of the thunderball turned the colorful magnetic light into a black and white magnetic talisman. It started to refine the inhibition of the yin and yang creation divine thunderball. Under Chunong's control, when the thunderball was wearing down the primordial magnetic essence chi, it purified the five-colored magnetic light into two colors of black and white. One was the Tai-yin, while the other was the Tai-yang. The two colors combined and shot towards the fire dragon that was formed by the fate of Tai-yang. The black and white divine light twisted and brushed off a thin layer of Tai-yang red mist from the fire dragon's body. The mist was swallowed by the two fire wings of the sun god and turned into their own nourishment as usual. Chunong sat cross-legged on the bow of the golden ship of fate. He controlled the golden ship to absorb the evil chi of the north magnetic evil chi and the Taihua dragon, and turn them into true talismans to refine the inhibition. Tianqi esteemed was controlling the natural magnetic formation. The colorful magnetic light kept coming from the magnetic veins, which was absorbed by the divine thunderball. The divine thunderball had the yin and yang creation divine light of magnetism, which kept removing the power of the Taihu dragon. This fire was neither gold nor iron, and it was not even close to the five elements. Its essence was a bit of mysterious yin, which was restrained by the yin and yang creation divine light. The black and white divine light of magnetism twisted and produced a wisp of mysterious yin fire, which was absorbed into the golden ship and turned into a true talisman to refine the inhibition. At first, it was just a wisp of mysterious yin fire, and it needed Qinang's help to refine it into true talismans to refine the inhibition. Later, the inhibition was upgraded and the power of the golden ship grew, so it didn't need Qinang's help anymore. It could digest the mysterious yin fire on its own. A few days later, it could absorb a few wisps of the Taihu dragon's red mist at the same time and turn them into the inhibition of the golden ship. This time, the efficiency was increased by more than 100 times. In less than a month, the thick protective red clouds, colorful lights, fire clouds, and red mist of the Taihu dragon transformed from the Taihu dragon were only left with a thin layer. This immense fiery aura was the key to the Tai Firehorn dragon's growth. Now that the golden ship had reduced it to this small amount, the Tai Firehorn dragon felt uncomfortable. The huge Tai Firehorn dragon's claws and teeth looked ferocious as it started to struggle slightly. Qinang saw that it was about to wake up. He pointed at the golden ship beneath him, and a black and white divine light of metamagnet that was several times thicker shone on it. The divine light of magnetism shone on the Taihu dragon, and the Taihu dragon became calm again. At the same time, he urged the golden ship to cast the yin and yang divine rays of magnetic light 5 times in a row until the red mist around Huiqiu was the thinnest. Huiqiu swayed uneasily, and an inconspicuous scale fell off from its tail. Once again, it turned into a thick red mist and wrapped its whole body inside. The golden ship was like a bottomless pit, swallowing the divine light of magnetism sent by Tianqi at the same time. The Taihu dragon absorbed the Taihu dragon's profound qi. The Taihu dragon didn't increase its temperature, and the Taihu dragon's profound qi didn't expand anymore. The Taihu dragon's profound qi was shrinking, and the Taihu dragon's profound qi also disappeared. Qinang took the opportunity to let Macho out. She coiled on the golden ship of fate's 2 giant sun god fire wings and breathed in and out the red mist. This red serpent was originally of the yin element, so although the Xian Yin Tai Huiqi was violent, it was suitable for it to breathe in and out, cleansing its body and improving its nature. In the enormous firepower that the golden ship was constantly spitting out, what Mo Cho absorbed could not even be counted as impurities. The divine light of magnetism sent out by the golden ship was as big as an acre. Every time the divine light of magnetism shone on the Taihu dragon, the Taihu dragon's profound qi was like a steel knife. Even though Qinang used the divine light to eliminate the Taihu dragon's profound qi from time to time, the Taihu dragon's profound qi was still struggling. However, the Taihu dragon was trapped by the 49 magnetic qi ropes of the natural magnetic formation, with the yellow river of 9 bends formation trapping its entire body. The fiery eye-horned dragon was like a dragon trapped in a shallow pool. All it could do was stir up the boiling lava and struggle with all its might in the lungs. Most of its consciousness was sealed by Chun Ang's spell, and its body was suppressed by the 2 great formations. Although it roared and roared in the lungs, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, stirring up a sea of fire that threatened to boil the earth's crust, the Taihu dragon was trapped in a small inhibition spell, so it couldn't do anything, let alone break through the earth's crust. The sea of fire it released couldn't penetrate the golden light of Chun Ang's golden ship of good fortune, and it couldn't reach Tianqi's treasure either. Even the Taihu dragon, who was lying on the divine fire wings of the sun, couldn't hurt the Taihu dragon. However, if the Taihu dragon acted rashly, it would be easy for the golden ship of good fortune to see through its weakness. It's time. If I keep weakening it, I'm afraid I'll destroy the minor Yuan calamity. The essence-fused divine light has already worn away the spirituality and suppressed the extreme fire's true self-consciousness to its limit. According to my calculations, in another 3/4 of an hour, the extreme fire eye's original consciousness will awaken. Chenong thought to himself, let's take this last chance and play it big. As soon as he finished talking, he jumped onto the golden ship and landed on the Taihu dragon's head, where the Taihu dragon's acupuncture points were located. This time, the black and white divine light was like a steel knife. It turned into a Tai Chi diagram and cut the Taihu dragon's horn. The horn was cut off by 3 inches. The divine light wrapped around the horn and brought it into the golden ship. The divine light then sent it into the divine thunderball. After suffering such a heavy injury, the fiery dragon it transformed from the Taihu Huiyin could no longer suppress its furious consciousness. It suddenly opened its eyes and woke up, roaring towards the sky. Its gigantic body that was tens of thousands of feet long tumbled in shock. The pure white Taihu Yan's endless firepower poured in all directions. Chapter 479. The fire dragon, which was formed by the Tai Fire Eye, struggled angrily, shaking the earth's crust and causing the primordial chi in the earth's lungs to tumble. The wind, earth, water, and fire all stirred up the earth's lungs like it was the end of the world. Countless strange creatures formed by the earth's turbidity dispersed. The hanging stalactites and ice, the boiling lava in the earth's crust, the phosphorescent white bones, everything exploded at the same time. Endless cold ice, divine thunder, fire, and earth's turbidity were stirred up, trying to turn the 10,000 miles underground into powder. Even Tianqi, who was sitting on a magnetic mountain, could sense this change. The magnetic peak shook incessantly. The aftershocks on Copper Coconut Island roused everyone with a start. They only thought it was an earthquake. Only Lu He and a few others were able to guess the inside story. They were secretly horrified, their minds wandering indeterminately. Amidst the countless disasters, a golden light stood still. No matter how many divine thunders and fires attacked, it could not be shaken in the slightest. Instead, it emitted a vast golden light, suppressing everything, trying to calm the tremors. The 9 rivers turned into chains, with the underground River as the main body, absorbing endless chi and firmly locking the fire dragon. Tianqi was amazed and thought, he really is the direct descendant of the primordial innate God, the disciple of the mystic door. Even Tenami wouldn't be able to suppress the Tai fire test. I wonder how powerful he was in his previous life. He was only a teenager when he reincarnated, and he didn't even have the fruit of the disbanded celestial way. But he already has such power. Feeling the immortal and indestructible gold in the golden light of the golden boat of good fortune, he was even more shocked. The gold is immortal. If this golden boat of good fortune is complete, it will be like the fruit of the golden celestial way. It will be indestructible. Since ancient times, only Guangchengzi became a golden celestial without ascending. Even Taoist Longbrow from a May mountain ascended with the fruit of the celestial way. However, fellow cultivator Chen's Dharma treasure has a trace of a golden immortal's Taoist rhyme. That's really shocking. Tianqi immediately put away the inexplicable delusion in his mind and activated the magnetic mountain restriction spell. The multicolored magnetic light from the innate magnetic formation shone in all directions, gradually calming the qi in the lungs. With the help of the magnetic light, the golden light emitted by the golden ship of fate suddenly expanded and absorbed all the multicolored magnetic light. It rotated in the golden ship's restrictive spell and turned into a strange black and white light. As soon as the light appeared, it froze the great fire horn dragon in place. The black and white colors swirled, forming a hazy gray chaos. The great fire horn dragon acted as if it had met its natural predator. It was so intimidated that it dared not wreak havoc. It hurriedly retracted its power and hid deeper into the earth's lungs. Emocho, who was entrenched on the fire wings of the sun god, saw that the fire dragon had escaped. Her body expanded several times in size against the wind, and she opened her mouth to swallow the specks of mysterious yellow that fell from the broken horn on the fire dragon's head. Macho, who was sitting on the fire wings of the god of sun, saw the Tai fire dragon escape. Her body expanded in the wind, and she opened her mouth to swallow the yellow light that fell from the Tai fire dragon's broken horn. After shedding its skin, Macho shrunk to only 3 inches long and went into Chun Ang's sleeve to digest what she had gained. After shedding its skin, Macho shrunk to only 3 inches long and went into Chun Ang's sleeve to digest what she had gained. Tian Chi, who was guarding the magnetic mountain, also sensed the change. He was relieved when he felt the Tai fire eye disappear. He wasn't an anomaly like Chenong. He didn't have the confidence to deal with this minor Yuan tribulation. If the Tai fire force exploded, no one on Copper Coconut Island could escape except for him. Moreover, even if he escaped alone, the karma he created would be enough to make him fall into depravity for countless lifetimes, and he would never be able to ascend to immortality. Tian Chi was on top of the magnetic mountain. He had the advantage of time and place. He had the magnetic great deployment spell to help him. Chun Ong had been trapped by the magnetic great deployment spell, and that was the perfect time for him to take revenge. He had used the magnetic mountain to suppress the earth meridians, and Chenong wouldn't be able to come up. However, such wild thoughts didn't arise in his heart at all. It wasn't for any other reason than because after this incident, he felt that if Chun Ong wanted to kill him, it wouldn't be much more difficult than crushing an ant. This person's dermic powers, divine arts, and even treasures were the best of the best in this realm. He was at the level of an ordinary heaven immortal, and he was far from being comparable to him. A golden light flashed in the earth veins, and a golden beam of light shot out from the magnetic mountain. The natural magnetic great formation seemed to be invisible, which surprised Tian Chi. He looked carefully and saw Chun Ang's golden boat of good fortune in front of him. A young Taoist priest was standing on the boat, wearing a feather robe and a star crown. He was smiling at him. The young Taoist smiled and said, "I've done it. I've refined the golden ship to a high level. With your help, I can break the polar magnetic high, baleful chi and go to the divine mountain. After this setback, the power of the great fire has been greatly reduced. I'm afraid it won't be able to recover its vitality even when the minor Yuan tribulation begins." Tian Chi smiled bitterly and asked, "Since you have such power, why do you need me? You could go to the polar magnetic high, baleful chi. Why do you need me?" Chenong shook his head and said, "Of course I need your help, but that's for later. I need to prepare for the trip to the polar magnetic high, baleful chi. How about this? 20 years later, I'll go with you to the Copper Coconut Island. What do you think?" What else could Tian Chi say? He nodded and agreed. The two of them returned to the cave on Copper Coconut Island. When Luha saw the two of them returning, a strange expression appeared on his face. He was about to step forward and pay his respects when Chun Ong stopped him with one hand and said, "You and I are fellow Taoists. There's no need to be like this." Luha forced a smile and said, "Senior and my master are of the same generation. How could Junior dare to be rude?" Chenong smiled and said, "Let's just call each other Taoist friends. We're in the same generation as you and your master." Luha asked again and again, but Chenong didn't let him. He agreed and said, "If that's the case, I'll take my leave." When they stepped into Chun Ang's cave, Princess Lingsha came up to welcome them. Chenong saw that she was full of magic energy and knew that she had been cultivating diligently for the past 2 months. He was slightly satisfied and casually gave her some pointers on the key points of cultivation, asking her to carefully memorize them. The golden ship of good fortune had improved greatly. Even without the help of Chun Ang's power, it wasn't afraid of the magnetic mountain anymore. They stopped at the port on the island. Chenong stayed on the Copper Coconut Island for a few days. Every day, apart from teaching Lingsha's cultivation, he would discuss Tao with Tian Chi, practice the magnetic spell, or walk on the beach and enjoy the scenery of the South China Sea. Chunong was very respected among the disciples of the Copper Coconut Island. Except for Luha, no one dared to talk to him as if he was from the same generation. Chapter 480. Chunong opened the magical treasure pouch. Sure enough, there was the copper coconut spirit tree wrapped in a clear magical light. There were also more than 100 other kinds of divine woods, which were used by the island's disciples to refine their swords. Tianxiang novel 2, Chunong waved his hand, and a clear light wrapped the spirit trees and sent them into the yellow river of Nine Bends Formation. He then planted them in the Pearl Palace. He thought for a while, then smiled and said, "How can I repay Tian Chi's great gift? I know that he loves these copper coconuts as much as his life. Now that he has given me so many, I'm afraid that he has used up all the copper coconuts on the island for hundreds of years. I don't feel good about it, so I will return the gift with this. I hope that you will not be stingy with this gift and give me some face." Chunong pointed his finger, and a coral mirror flew out from his sleeve and landed in Luhi's hand. He had refined many tool embryos in the volcano of Moonchild Island, and this was one of them. It was made of coral, and the divine light of a 1,000-year-old clam in the sea was the mirror. It was elegant, and it shone brightly in Luhi's hand. As the eldest martial brother of Copper Coconut Island, how could Luhi's eyes be compared to those wandering cultivators who cherished a crude treasure as much as their life? However, he could see that this mirror was full of spirit light, and its quality was excellent. Although he had many treasures, none of them could compare to this. If he succeeded in refining it in the future, it would definitely be the best treasure in his hands. He then heard Chunong say, "I still have many treasures in my hands, but most of them are made of metal, and they are not suitable for you to refine on Copper Coconut Island. This coral mirror is made of 10,000-year-old blood coral from a sea and a 1,000-year-old divine clam. It is called Sea-Splitting Mirror, and it is especially good at flying through the sea. The divine light of the mirror can reach you in the blink of an eye, and it has the same effect as the first escape art of the mystic door, spiritual light escape. I will give it to you to refine your demon to protect yourself. You can ask your master for the restriction of metamagnet divine light to refine. It has other uses." Luha held the coral mirror and listened to Chunong's instructions. Suddenly, an idea flashed in his mind, and he injected his prime magnetism magic power into the mirror. Immediately, a divine light that was more than 10,000 feet long shot out from the mirror towards the magnetic peaks. Luha saw this and quickly retracted the divine light, but in his panic, the mirror shook and accidentally shone on one of his junior martial brothers. The treasured mirror's divine light retracted and forcefully pulled this junior martial brother over to Luhi's front. He didn't have the slightest strength to resist and could only stare dumbstruck in the divine light. Even his mind was frozen. Luha tested the power of the mirror and was shocked. He quickly dispersed the divine light. He saw his junior martial brother looking around and didn't know why he suddenly came here from 10 miles away. Although Luha was surprised by the power of the coral mirror, he couldn't help but feel happy. He thought, Chandao's mana is really profound to be able to give me such a powerful treasure so casually. And the other junior martial brothers still treated the 1,000-year-old copper coconut as a treasure and didn't want to give it to Chandaoyu. How would they know that the mystic door has endless treasures? Chandao's mana is profound, and he easily gave such precious treasures to others. As expected, we, the disciples of Copper Coconut Island, have been associated with the wandering cultivators too much and have been stingy and short-sighted. He raised his head and looked at the golden light of Chunong's golden ship of creation disappearing into the sea, and sighed, in Chandao's heart, I'm afraid that hundreds or thousands of such treasures are not as important as a trace of Tao. He felt a little sad when he thought of this. But when he thought about it, his primordial spirit rose, and he became more spirited. Chandaoyu has his own Tao of immortality, but what about me? Even if I have thousands of treasures and countless powerful spells, if I don't achieve immortality, I won't be able to ascend, and I will definitely become a pile of dust and ashes in the future. If I only seek a moment of freedom like before, and don't care about immortality, won't I be wasting the opportunities and efforts of this life? On the waves of Copper Coconut Island, Luha silently made a wish to achieve immortality, and suddenly there was a little more determination in his eyes. He looked at the direction where Chunong left, and there was a change in his body that made people look at him with new eyes. After this farewell, I will never forget my wish to achieve immortality. Lu He clapped his hands and sang loudly on the shore, sending Chunong off. A few hundred miles away, Chunong stood on the golden ship and suddenly smiled. He urged the golden ship to go straight to the eye of the South Sea. Chunong was tired of controlling the boat and wanted to devote himself to his research. He handed the golden boat over to Lingsha to control. Firstly, it was to train her to be able to travel the 4 seas and use her mana. Secondly, it was not the job of a disciple to be enslaved. If the master needed something, the disciple would do it for him. Since there was such a useful slave, why would Chunong bother? Chunong was used to using the golden ship, so he didn't notice it until Princess Lingsha received it and compared it to the others. Then he realized the convenience of the golden ship. The situation in the sea was unpredictable, and there were storms, sea beasts, lightning, giant waves, dragons, pirates, and all kinds of dangers. Even the mermaids, who were born to be part of the sea, had to face many dangers, and there was always the risk of going missing or dying. It was not until she piloted the golden ship that Lingsha realized the benefits. Not only was it faster than any other ship, but it also saved her from the suffering of riding sea beasts. Even her dragon whale was troublesome to take care of, so how could it be compared to the golden ship? Furthermore, within 3 feet of the golden light, no storm could enter the ship, and people on the ship would never suffer from the wind and waves. Even in the midst of a storm, the golden ship was as stable as land. If the sea beasts blocked the way and the pirates robbed them, she only needed to activate the divine thunder on the ship from afar to turn them into charcoal. If she got tired of looking at the surface of the sea, the golden ship could even dive into the water and enjoy the scenery. Chunong opened up a cave in the belly of the golden ship that was about 1,000 miles wide. He took a piece of land from the South China Sea and practiced all kinds of Tao of creation in it. He used the Yellow River of 9 bends to collect a lot of first yuan heavy water in the lungs of the earth. Although it was not as endless as the other 2, it was enough for him to cultivate one innate water dharma to the initial level. He let Macho out and asked Lingsha to keep her company while he isolated himself in the cave of the golden ship and practiced the 3 Tao of innate water. 1 drop of first yuan heavy water could turn into thousands of water in the world, and when it melted, it would form a lake. If Chunong splashed a few drops of Tianyi true water on the ground, he would be able to create great rivers like the Yangtze River and the Yellow River. With the Tianyi true water that Chunong had infused with the Tianyi true water, if he had the intention to spread it on the ground, he would have long turned Middle Earth into a swamp country. Other than the barely populated highlands, the people in other places would all be fed to the fishes and turtles. If the Xinming true water in the heavenly river dharma was used, its power would not be any weaker than the first yuan heavy water, and the consequences would not be any better than the flood formed by the first yuan heavy water. Thousands of miles of ice, billions of lives would be frozen, and a small half of the planet of Shu, which was tens of thousands of times the size of the Ming dynasty, would become a frozen land in the North Pole. If Chunong used all his strength, it would not be difficult to turn the whole world into the Cambrian period. As for the first yuan heavy water, it was the heaviest. A single drop weighed 1 yuan. Furthermore, the greater the amount of true water gathered, the heavier it became. If Chunong turned it into rain and rained it down, the turbid air would surge up and shake the mountains and rivers hundreds of millions of miles away. It would revert back to the turbid air and turn the solidified material state of the Shushan planet back to the primordial chi state. Chapter 481. Even though the sea was vast and the golden ship was fast, it didn't take long for them to reach the eye of the South Sea that Chunong was looking for. Princess Lingsha was from the sea race and was familiar with the sea. Under her control, the temperature of the sea quickly dropped, and the golden ship sailed into a cold sea. Chun-Ong leaped onto the sword beam and flew up to the clouds in the sky, looking around. He saw two barren reefs in the distance. One of them was only a few hundred feet above the ground. It was flat and round like a mirror and was a few acres big. As expected, this should be the cold spring of the eye of the South Sea that Golden Beard's slave mentioned. The shape of this barren reef is the same as what he said. Back then, the two phoenixes, and the three phoenixes met Tiger Head, Zen Master of the East Seas, Evil Dragon Island's Long Wind Cave. He was slaughtering a strange beast in the eye of the sea, the three-star beauty salamander, and took its inner core to refine the essence of the mysterious mother. He was hit by the heaven sky mountain's young man's godly thunder. At first, when I heard what he said, I didn't think too much. But now that I think about it, there is more to it than meets the eye. The heaven sky mountain's young man is one of the most powerful itinerant immortals in the sea. It was not a coincidence that Tiger Head Zen Master was punished by him. There must be another reason. I want to open an abode here, but I'm afraid there will be some trouble. Chun-Ong sighed and waved his hand. The creation was put back into his sleeve. He took Lingsha with him and turned into a silver light that landed on the barren reef. The South Sea was located in the extreme south. It was the warmest sea among the four seas. However, there was an extremely cold sea current within 1,000 miles. Even though it nourished countless sea creatures, it made the surrounding climate dry and cold. It was not like the hot and poisonous land in the south. The barren reef was not more than 100 steps wide and could be seen with one glance. Although it was in the eye of the sea, it was not as important as the Purple Cloud Palace's immortal island. If Chun-Ong wanted to be like the Purple Cloud Palace, closing the sea eye and leaving only the immortal island as a facade, he would probably have to move mountains and fill seas. Chun-Ong opened his sleeves and was about to release the golden ship of fate to escape into the sea. Suddenly, he saw an invisible conveyance light landing on a desolate reef, not far away, and secretly peeping at him. Chun-Ang's Dharma, I saw through her true appearance. It was a woman who looked to be in her late 20s. Looking at her invisible mana, it was quite extraordinary. This woman was hiding on the desolate reef, and she didn't know that Chun-Ong had already discovered her. She was cultivating on a deserted island nearby when she suddenly saw a ray of treasure light shooting up from the nearby sea surface. It was like a meteor streaking across the sky, leaving a silver mark on the sea surface. Because she was concerned about an extremely important secret here, she couldn't let it go, so she secretly came to investigate. This person stopped on this desolate reef. It looks like he isn't just passing by. He came here intentionally. Could it be because of that secret as well? 10 years ago, because of a great opportunity, I saw the senior in the eye of the sea spitting out multicolored light and discovered this secret. Ever since I received the teachings of that senior, my mana improved greatly. Since then, I have been cultivating here in seclusion. This eye of the sea is secluded, and no one came here for 10 years. Why are there people coming to disturb me recently? This woman was also from an unorthodox sect. She was originally useless and only had some mixed and weak mana. Although she received some true teachings and her mana improved greatly, seeing that Chun-Ang's conveyance light was pure, she knew that she wasn't his match. She was also worried that her family's secret would be discovered, so she suddenly became anxious. She couldn't help but scold. Those famous sects are really too much. It's hard for us unorthodox sect, loose cultivators to cultivate. We had some fortuitous encounters by chance, but they still want to disturb and destroy us. The last time that person came, he almost killed all the 3-star beauties in the vicinity. This time, this person is probably going to ruin my plans. Seeing that she didn't move, Chun-Ong thought for a while and felt that there was no need to be so careful. With his cultivation, it was fine even if he was a little rash. He reached out and pointed, and the metamagnet divine light shone on the reef. The surging metamagnet divine light wrapped the entire reef, and with a slight tremble, the female cultivator was pulled over. Princess Lingsha, who was at the side, also felt something, but with her master here, she didn't dare to act rashly. Seeing that the female cultivator was stunned by Chanong, she went up and circulated her Xianming mana. She slapped her body and sealed her mana. At the same time, she used a cold current to wake her up. This female cultivator was different from the many strange races in the various countries across the sea. She looked like someone from Middle-earth. Her lips were tightly shut, and she stared blankly at Chanong. Her breasts rose up and down, and she was a little scared and a little embarrassed for being caught peeping. Chanong smiled faintly and asked, "So it's a fellow Taoist. But why did fellow Taoist peep and violate my taboo?" The female cultivator pondered for a while before she organized her words and calmed the fear in her heart. She said, "Tan Yun doesn't dare to offend fellow Taoist. I accidentally saw fellow Taoist light, and I didn't want to do such a sneaky thing. It's just that a fellow Taoist came here to secretly kill a strange beast in the sea, 3-star beauties. My own mana needs to borrow the essence of this beast's enigmatic mother in order to merge and improve, so I kept a close eye on it. I was worried that fellow Taoist would have the same intention, so I could only secretly ask around. I hope fellow Taoist can forgive me." Chinong nodded and said, "I see. Then I don't blame fellow Taoist for this matter." However, he seemed to be curious and asked, "But does fellow Taoist know the origin of the person who killed the 3-star beauties? Is it also for the essence of that strange beast's inner core, enigmatic mother?" Tan Yun frowned and said doubtfully, "That person's mana is strong, and his actions are cruel. How would I dare to meet him? He hid himself under the protection of a senior. I only know that he often lured the beauties out and used his flying sword to kill them. The blood, essence, and souls of the beauties were all sucked away by him, leaving only dried corpses. Such a terrifying method. His origin must be extraordinary." Chinong thought about the spells that could steal the blood, essence, and souls of living beings. The most famous one should be the blood god of the blood divine cult. However, after Dang Yin was sealed, this spell did not appear in this world for a long time. Similarly, the mysterious Yin beast gathering banner of the Heaven Lewd cult was also the same. Now that the calamity of a May cult had not arrived, and the evil spirits were still in hiding, it was quite strange that something like this happened. However, other than these famous spells, there were many other demonic spells that could harvest blood, essence, and souls. As far as Chunong knew, there were no less than 7. Now that he had not seen those corpses, it was difficult to make a judgment. If he really killed with his flying sword and could harvest blood, essence, and souls, then this Su's origin was probably not simple, and his power was amazing. Chinong saw that Tan Yun's eyes were wandering, and was afraid that she was still hiding something, so he lied to her. "I have heard of this form of death. It seems that the blood god's son Deng Yin, the long-brow spiritual master's junior brother, cultivated the great Azura secret technique Blood God Sutra. When ordinary people and beasts were pounced on by a spell, their blood essence would be sucked dry, and their souls would be imprisoned, never to be reincarnated." Sure enough, after hearing what he said, the female cultivator Tan Yun's body stiffened, and a look of fear appeared on her face. She hurriedly asked, "Is what fellow Taoists said true?" Chunong nodded and saw that she suddenly bowed to him. He quickly pointed to the void, and an invisible force appeared out of nowhere to support her knees. He only heard her say, "I still hid some things before. Please don't blame me, fellow Taoist." The primordial spirit of an itinerant immortal of the East Sea in the past is still trapped in the eye of the sea here. Because he committed a fire tribulation, his corpse was dismembered in this eye of the sea, and he borrowed the power of the cold spring to protect his primordial spirit from being hurt by the Yin fire. However, after the fire tribulation subsided, his primordial spirit was sealed in this cold spring of the eye of the sea. Only during the summer solstice and dragon boat festival every year can he collect the yang qi of heaven and earth to melt some of the 10,000-year-old ice essence that sealed him. Because of some opportunities, I have a half-teacher relationship with this itinerant immortal, and he taught me the heavenly book to practice. Previously, When the demon came to the eye of the sea to kill, I inadvertently took care of him once, and he used a spell to plot against me. Fortunately, there was that senior to help me, and I was spared. However, it allowed him to see a trace of that senior's actual situation. After searching for a few days, he didn't see any trace of us, so he left in a hurry. I thought that he had already given up, but after hearing what fellow Taoist said today, only then did I know that he actually practiced such a vicious spell. He must be after that itinerant immortal senior's primordial spirit, and he will come again in the future. I'm afraid that I won't be able to resist him alone. The next time he comes, he will definitely have a way to break our spell of invisibility. Fellow Taoist, please help me release the senior's primordial spirit and escort him to reincarnation. In the cold spring, there are a number of magic treasures, Taoist books, and elixirs sealed by the senior when he was alive. I am willing to share a portion with fellow Taoist. Of course, Chenong refused to believe all of it. He used the divine light of metamagnet to illuminate the surface of the sea, and the divine light, a metamagnet of Een, spread out to an area of an acre. It went deep into the sea, and sure enough, he saw some clues. In the cold spring of the eye of the sea, other than a few 3-star beautiful turtles, there was a faint 5-colored light circulating. There were indeed traces of prohibition, but how knowledgeable was Chenong? He was not as gullible as the female cultivator Tan Yin. Chapter 482. The metamagnet divine light circled around the restriction a few times, and Chenong could see through some of it. He couldn't help but sneer in his heart as he thought to himself, "This person is really up to no good. When I look at the restriction restraining him, the clear light is contained within and the Tao rhyme is hidden. It's obviously the mystic door's orthodox, 3 pure, one's mana. It's the most neutral and peaceful. On the other hand, although I can't see clearly the person being suppressed in the restriction, there's a hot and poisonous air. Look at the color, it's red and dry. Look at the air, it's mixed and smelly. It faintly gives me a feeling of 1,000 miles of red land and gloomy and dead air. Although he's trying his best to hide it, the corpse stench on him that's similar to the flying yiksha still can't escape the divine light's detection." After noticing so many traces, Chenong only needed to use his primordial spirit to calculate 70 to 80% of his origin. He immediately sneered in his heart, but didn't show anything on his face. He followed Tan Yun into the eye of the sea and followed the source of the cold currents in the countless water channels. Chenong casually shook open the one heaven water banner, and a stream of light wrapped around the two of them, avoiding the 3 stars beauty chi that was reproducing in the eye of the sea. They gradually entered the depths of the eye of the sea, and under Tan Yun's lead, the traveling light drilled into the earth's crust and stopped in front of a glacier. Tan Yun bowed towards the glacier and formed a spell with her left hand to silently pray. She saw that Chenong was standing still at the side and thought that it was the bad temper of a disciple of the mystic door. She couldn't help but be delighted. This person doesn't even have the Tao fruit of an itinerant immortal, but he's arrogant and behaves like a disciple of a famous sect. I'm praying to Senior here, but he's not willing to lower his head. How can he please Senior like this? Even if his talent is better than mine, with this kind of personality, he will definitely make Senior unhappy. How could he pass the robe to him? He became even more sincere as he made up his mind. Chenong could guess what she was thinking just by looking at the flash of joy in her eyes. He watched coldly and watched to see what tricks the person in the ice would play. Although the person in the ice could be said to be a monstrous devil in this world, Chenong already had the appearance of a golden immortal before he was born. In the future, he would be a figure who could split the world apart. Even his greatest enemy was a figure who suppressed the multiverse and experimented with countless civilizations. A mere mortal devil was not worthy of his attention. When Chenong saw the 1,000-year profound Een frost essence that formed the glacier, he was able to deduce many things. So even this group of 3-star beauties were not born in the eye of the sea. I'm afraid they were reared by someone to guard and strengthen this person's restrictions. I've already seen through this person's background. His innate nature is of the fire attribute. and his fate energy is great and different. There's also a hint of corpse energy hidden in his aura. I'm afraid he's either Huaho or Hanba. Heh. As a Hanba, he was suppressed in the eye of the sea and even connected to the restriction of the earth vein cold spring. He also reared a group of 3-star beauties day and night. The essence of Mother Xianfeng in his inner core was spat on the glacier to strengthen the restriction. Such means are not inferior to the long-brow spiritual master. This Hanba has been suppressed here for more than 1,000 years, but his spirit and body have not been completely destroyed. He died with a breath of resentment. When he was alive, his power should have been close to that of a heaven immortal. Although his essence has been damaged and his vitality has been greatly damaged, I'm afraid he has already comprehended many principles of yin and yang. After coming out of the restriction, he has the potential to break through the heavenly devil realm and reincarnate into the great Azura, supreme heavenly devil body. Previously, when Tiger Head Zen Master came here to steal the essence of Mother Xianfeng's inner core, I'm afraid it was also deliberately misled by someone. When a young man from Tianqian Mountain hit him with the innate thunder, he was probably entrusted by someone to guard the restriction here. As for the person who came here to slaughter the beauty, the person in the restriction taught Tan Yun the method of using Mother Xianfeng to refine magic power. It should all be to break one of the meridians of this restriction. Now, it seems that they actually succeeded. The person that Tan Yun mentioned before is actually colluding with the person in the restriction, wanting to break out of the restriction and come into the world. There is no door to fortune or disaster. Only people can bring it on themselves. The South Sea, I was connected to the fate energy of the 4 seas, and Shenong used the 9 Bends Yellow River Formation to suppress the fate energy. The previous 2 times he opened the sea, he borrowed people to block the tribulation and transferred the karma. Now, according to Chun Ang's calculations, this tribulation might not be able to be delayed any longer. When Shenong starts to open the abode, the 4 seas will open the tribulation at the same time. It was also under the guidance of fate energy that there was the sea eye to seal the demon. The person in the glacier would never have thought that Shenong had calculated so much in such a short period of time. Only when Tan Yun prayed for 3/4 of an hour did a shadow slowly appear on the glacier. As expected, he wore a high hat and black robe, different from the common people. If it wasn't for Chun Ang's Dharma eye that saw through the rigidity of his physical body under his skin and the circulation of baleful aura, he would have been easily fooled by him. This person was probably an impressive cultivator when he was alive, and after turning into a drought demon, he was even more powerful. If he could get rid of this corpse aura and come back to life, he would be the great Azura's undying heavenly demon body and become one of the most terrifying old demons in the universe. His shadow did not move, but a clear shout came from the ice wall. The overseas itinerant cultivator Gu Haozi is frozen here because of the tribulation. Fellow Taoist, please help me break my corpse. If you can melt this piece of ice, I can pass down all the Tao skills I left behind. Before Chunong could reply, he felt a nameless cursed power mixed in his voice. If he answered, he would definitely take advantage of this to absorb a bit of his aura, and he would be impeached. He thought, this person is really cautious. Not only does he know how to deceive others with lies, he also knows how to guard against it. It's just that he has eyes but cannot see. Seeing that I'm not an itinerant immortal, he looked down on me. He thought that I'm an itinerant cultivator trying to fool him. His words are very explicit, and his methods are not clever. He made a virtual aura and sent out along with his answer. Is what you said true? He saw that Gu Haozi looked down on him. So he also put on a lawless, arrogant, and willful look, completely imitating the look of a spoiled disciple of the righteous path. He did not need to figure out a lot of acting skills. As long as he imitated 80% of Wang Ming's look, there would be a lot of similarities. He imitated Wang Ming's look back then. He raised his chin and said disdainfully, "You're just an overseas itinerant immortal. What's so special about your Tao skills and treasured weapons that are worth my attention? Don't talk about this. I'll just help you out a bit on account of our friendship." There was nothing wrong with what he said, but his tone was too domineering, causing the female cultivator Tan Yun to turn pale with fright. She thought, he wasn't like this just now. Could it be that he was just suppressing himself, and now he's showing his true nature? He obviously wanted to help, but why did he make it look like we're enemies? But then she relaxed a little. After all, he's a disciple of a famous sect. It's natural that he wouldn't fight with me for the Tao Book inheritance. I've underestimated him. I didn't expect that he would look down on the things that I value as much as my life. Chapter 483. Chunong only sneered in his heart. I do know of one Yang treasure. It is condensed from the 10,000-year-old Yang essence of Misty Mountain, but that 10,000-year-old warm jade was left by Changmei to his lover in his previous life, the reincarnated body of the nine heavens demoness Chenziqin, Liang Qiong. Moreover, Liang Qiong is my disciple's disciple. She is decisive in killing, which suits my temperament. How can I let you cheat such a good thing? He only smiled faintly on the surface and flicked his finger to release the samadhi fire of refining devil, and said loudly, Yang treasure can nourish the body and strengthen the Tao foundation. How can it be easy to obtain? But I do have a treasure of the essence of fire. I wonder if it is suitable? He rotated the samadhi fire in his hand, sprinkling many sparks. It was so beautiful that Tan Yun was dazzled by it. The samadhi fire of refining devil could melt the ice that sealed Hamba's heavenly corpse. There was no joke more ridiculous than this in the world. If this fire burned, would it melt the ice? Or would it refine the devil? If Hamba was not afraid that the true samadhi fire would melt his body and damage his essence, of course he could give it a try. In this world, other than the purple-green Tusita fire that Li Yingqiong obtained in the future, there was nothing else that could restrain Hamba better than this true samadhi fire. If it was not for the fact that Chang's true samadhi fire was not mature enough, with Hamba's current weakness, it was not impossible to burn him to death. Even so, this unrefined, true samadhi fire had the possibility of destroying Hamba's Tao foundation. Gu Haozi did not dare to let him try. He quickly said, This fire is powerful, but its power is not mature yet. Even if it breaks through the 10,000-year-old Hamba's prohibition, it will not be able to protect my body in time. Please try another fire attribute treasure. It would be better if it is neutral and mild. Fortunately, I am not in a hurry. Please pay more attention, my two young friends. This time, he already had a 50 to 60% chance of breaking out of the seal. If it was in the past, it would have been more urgent to win over Chunong. But now, there were 3 or 4 waves of people who wanted to let him out. Chunong and the others were the spare tires, so why would he take the risk? The two of them each had their own ulterior motives, and they tacitly changed the topic. Tan Yin took the opportunity to mention Chunang's previous guess that the invader might have practiced the Blood God Sutra. Gu Haozi pondered for a moment before saying, Ever since Deng Yin and his disciples were imprisoned, and the Blood God ancestor has not appeared for a long time, the Blood God Sutra has not been circulated in the world. Could it be that Deng Yin has unsealed himself? Or did the Blood God ancestor have other inheritances? Listening to your description, this really seems to be the most powerful magic in the Blood God Sutra. This blood shadow divine technique is extremely vicious. This old Taoist will have to ask the two of you to investigate it. He continued, If it's really the magic of the Blood God Sutra, this matter will be extremely dangerous. The two of you must not act rashly. My slough is sealed in ice, and I can't send out many treasures. I only have one escape technique that I can teach the two of you. This escape technique is a simplified version of the fastest spiritual light escape technique of the mystic door. It's called the Ice Soul Divine Light Escape. With this to protect yourself, you can escape from the hands of the demonic disciple even in a dangerous situation. After saying that, he really transmitted a spell formula into the ears of Chunong and Tan Yin. Chunong quietly activated his primordial spirit and saw that this spell formula was basically the same. However, a few key points seemed to be compatible with his impeachment curse dharma access, and there were some hidden traps. At the side, Tan Yin was overjoyed. She never thought that she would be able to obtain such a true inheritance. She was even more loyal to Gu Haozi, and she was only short of raising her hand to swear to find out the whereabouts of the demonic person. On the other hand, Chunong thought more. With Gu Hao Zi's actions, he must have slept in the same bed as the person who saved him. He might not even know the true origins of the person, so he was more guarded than others, and Chunong could be considered as one of the chess pieces he prepared. If Gu Hao Zi could take this opportunity to spy on that person's background, he would be prepared if he were to fall out with him in the future. Chunang's plan was even deeper. He was feigning civility with this old monster. 80% of it was because he had taken a fancy to the demonic body that the old monster had cultivated for many years. This was also an extremely daring plan. Ordinary people were afraid of this old monster and could not wait to escape. For someone like Chunong who wanted to refine the old monster into his own refined corpse, it was not enough to describe him as a person with great skill and courage. This drought demon was experienced and its nature was excellent. If Chunong really refined it into his own demonic god, a demonic god of the level of the great Azura, supreme demonic body, it could be said to be the most powerful demonic treasure in this world. Even if an ordinary person obtained it, he could go to West Kunlun and call himself a demon ancestor. With such a good material, there were 3 levels of utilization. The lowest level was, of course, to destroy the Hitorigami's self-consciousness and refine it as an excellent zombie. Although the Hitorigami obtained was considered powerful, it had already lost the possibility of transforming into the great Azura, supreme demon body. It was really a reckless waste of such a good material. The middle level was naturally to restrain Gu Hao Zi's consciousness and use the most profound method of refining demonic gods to refine him. It would make him beg for death, but he could not. In one move, he would become one of the most powerful demonic gods of the formless demonic path. The disadvantage was that the drought demon's consciousness would resist, and it would delay the time of transformation. It would take a long time to refine, and it would also damage one's potential. The highest level was what Chunong was plotting now. He wanted to let Gu Hao Zi become Chun Ang's refined corpse unknowingly. Even his consciousness would be refined into something like a talisman or spiritual consciousness. He would turn from a living being in the world into an existence like an object. Because it involved the Tao of creation and the transformation of the body, not only would it not damage one's potential, it would also have another magical effect in Chunang's hands. Both of them had ulterior motives. Other than Tan Yun, who was unaware, they were actually competing to see who was more scheming. Currently, Chunong was far ahead of them. He had even vaguely grasped a trace of the main deity. Although there was no evidence yet, according to Chun Ang's primordial spirit, there was indeed something strange about it, and it was definitely related to the main deity. Gu Hao Zi guided Tan Yun to inhale and exhale the 10,000-year-old cold essence from the glacier and refined it into traces of icy divine light. Chun Ang's Xianming real water could freeze the heaven and earth. It was far superior to the icy divine light. Although he knew that Gu Hao Zi had the intention to wear down the prohibition on him, Chunong still used a limited amount of the cold spring's essence. He even secretly collected the remaining 3 stars beauty and placed them into the yellow river of Nine Bends Formation. In order to gain the upper hand, Chunong silently merged the yellow river of Nine Bends Formation with the Eye of the Sea. Although the formation was not activated, Chunong could activate the formation with a single thought, trapping everything in the Eye of the Sea into the formation. If Gu Hao Zi wanted to break through the prohibition while Chunong was not around, he would find out that there was a more terrifying formation outside the prohibition. Although Gu Hao Zi could sense the slight changes in the Eye of the Sea, he was a zombie after all. He did not have a primordial spirit and was not as sensitive to the mysteries of heaven as a cultivator. An anomaly like Chunong could even scheme against a cultivator, let alone him. Chapter 484. Chen Daoyu, that enemies' whereabouts are unpredictable. We don't have any clues. The 4 seas are vast. How can we find him? Moreover, the Blood God Sutra can be released, and released freely. We might not be able to recognize him, even if we meet. Sister-in-law wants to see you. The most talkative girl, Yin Qing, Can you come to my temporary abode for a discussion so that I can complete Senior's request? Tan Yun stared at Chenong with her beautiful eyes. She knew that the mana of this mystic door elite was 10 times stronger than her. If she really wanted to save Gu Hao Zi, she would have to rely on Chenong's strength. There were a few obstacles that were the most difficult to refine Gu Hao Zi into a refined corpse. Chenong also needed to make some preparations. Now that he had that person's reputation, if he sneaked into the Eye of the Sea, he would be sent to Chenong, so he was not in a hurry. He smiled at Tan Yun and said, "There's no hurry. Let me first set up the prohibition to prevent that person from sneaking in." As soon as he finished, he threw the one sky water banner in his hand and turned into a stream of light that went into the Eye of the Sea. In an instant, a thick fog suddenly appeared on the sea. It was as dense as clouds, and the chi of water essence was rich. Chenong pretended to make gestures and chanted incantations, but he actually absorbed the 9 mother wind chi essences that he collected previously and sent them into the prohibition one by one. Suddenly, a strong wind blew on the sea. The 9 mother wind chi essences were bound by the prohibition and gradually passed through the Eye of the Sea, forming a huge waterspout that sucked in the sea surface. Countless Gui water essences were condensed into thunderballs by Chenong and thrown into the waterspout. Gradually, the wind and water calmed down and the sea surface calmed down. However, Tan Yun knew that if someone touched the prohibition, many of the tricks that she had accumulated previously would burst out at the same time. Even if it could not hurt that enemy, it was enough to warn them. Chenong stopped and smiled. "I've set up a shapeless fog in this Eye of the Sea. Ordinary sea beasts and ships passing by won't disturb. If a cultivator enters the Eye of the Sea, he will see the 3-star beauty transformed by my talisman. If his magic power is activated, it will cause the Mother Wind Essence Chi and the 10th Water True Thunder to attack at the same time, which is enough to stop him from coming to us." Tanya nodded and agreed with Chun Ang's meticulousness. After the arrangements were made, the two of them flew towards a nearby deserted island under Tan Yun's guidance. Chenong noticed that Tan Yun's flying sword light was dim. Obviously, the quality was not good. Not only was the flying speed of the sword light slow, but its spirituality was also lacking. Tan Yun, on the other hand, didn't think much of her own sword ray. She had seen flying swords like this when she traveled overseas. She only saw the pure water-colored sword ray around Chun Ang's body, and she was very envious. She thought to herself, Chun Dao's sword ray is the most pure color and has the most spirituality that I have ever seen in my life. That banner-like magic treasure of his earlier spread out to cover dozens of kilometers, and it's extremely fast in the water. It's clear that it's extraordinary. Not to mention that golden ship magic treasure. I heard that ships, palaces, buildings, and pagodas are the rarest magic treasures, and the materials used are more abundant than the other small items. Moreover, their bodies are huge, and it's harder to cultivate spirituality. For Chen Daoyu to have such a magic treasure, it's obvious that he's very rich. Immediately, she felt ashamed in her heart. I'm just a short-sighted person. I thought that Chen Daoyu would covet my opportunity and compete with me for Senior Guhauzi's treasure. With his wealth, how could he be interested in such trivial things? In order to pass the fire tribulation, Senior Guhauzi must have destroyed some of his precious magic treasures. Only a rogue cultivator of the unorthodox school like me would treat it as a treasure. Thinking of this, Tan Yun couldn't help but blush. She saw that the deserted island where her cave abode was located was already in sight. She quickly pressed down the sword ray, lowered her head, and went into the cave abode. The deserted island was only dozens of kilometers wide. It was tall in the east and short in the west, and at the top was a cliff that faced the sea. The female cultivator, Tan Yun's cave abode, was in the middle of the cliff. Through the mountain, the front cave opened to the inside of the island, and the back cave could directly see the sea. Inside, there were tables, chairs, and beds carved from stone. The furniture was all covered with large pieces of fur cushions. There was a crystal lamp in the middle of the cave abode that emitted a bright light that illuminated the entire cave abode. When Chenong stepped into the cave abode, he stepped on a piece of soft cotton. It was the best white bear skin of the North Sea. In Chun Ang's eyes, Tan Yun's mana was only third-rate, but her usage was already comparable to that of a noble. Compared to the many luxuries of the future, it was just a little less novel, but more exquisite. In fact, any cultivator didn't need to worry about money. There were many uncivilized places in the world that only cultivators could go to, and the resources there were much more abundant than in the mortal world. Many of the unorthodox sects overseas, because they didn't know the principle of frugality of heaven and earth, and didn't ask for the number of tribulations, sometimes had more abundant resources than the orthodox mystic door. The two of them sat in the cave abode, and Tan Yun brought tea over. She personally poured it for Chun Ang before saying, "Chun Dao Yu, the Yang Harmony treasure and the essence of the true fire that Senior Gu Hao needs to unravel his corpse. I've been searching for it for 10 years, and I've only heard the scarlet crowball that long-brow spiritual master made 1,000 years ago, the golden crow divine fire from ancient times, and the inner core of Senior Golden Beard Slave from the Purple Cloud Palace in the South Sea. As for the Yang Harmony treasure, I've never heard of it. Not to mention that these 3 treasures are in the hands of the senior individual immortals. There's also a big sect like Amei. How are we going to ask for it? Just the Yang Harmony treasure alone is a huge chasm." Hearing this, Chun Ang pretended a frown and said, "The reason why Gu Hao wants this Yang Harmony treasure, I've also guessed a little about the inside story. It's nothing more than his corporeal body dying, and his primordial spirit being invaded by the cold air. He needs a gentle and moderate yang qi to nourish his primordial spirit and warm his corporeal body. If this problem can be solved, he doesn't necessarily need this kind of treasure." The female cultivator, Tan Yun, was even more confused. The Yang Harmony treasure was already a mirage, and a treasure that could solve the problem of Gu Hao's primordial spirit and corporeal body was even more unheard of. She didn't know why Chen Ang mentioned it. She only heard Chen Ang continue saying, "The primordial spirit is invaded by the cold air. If there's a Yang Harmony treasure to warm it up, that would naturally be the best. But if there's no such thing, there's no harm in giving it a little. I have a spell called the Taiyin Form Refining Technique, which is the Maoshan Shanqing sect's true legacy spell. It can be used to attach the primordial spirit to the moon and refine one's corporeal body into the Taiyin godly form. It has other advantages. Fellow Taoist, Gu Hao's primordial spirit is invading the cold air and refining it with the Taiyin form. Not only is it harmless, but it's also beneficial. In this way, he'll achieve the Taiyin body, and he'll no longer be affected by the cold air. He'll be able to walk and reincarnate like a normal person, but it'll be harder for him to ascend. But since he's plotting to reincarnate, it won't be a hindrance." Tan Yun was confused. She only knew that what Chun Ang said was impressive, but she didn't understand the inside story. If Gu Hao was here, he would have already understood what Chen Ang meant. The so-called Taiyin body was nothing more than a different kind of refined corpse. The Taiyin form refining technique had been passed down for a long time. Early in the ancient times, there were witchcraft that refined one's body into a dead object in order to seek longevity. The so-called Blood Clan in the extreme west and the Flying Yiksha in the east were all like this. The Taiyin form refining technique was the best of this path. It even refined death into life and refined the primordial spirit to attach to the shell. It was the method of the ancient Qi cultivator's primordial spirit to reside in the world, and the corpse's body was refined into the Taiyin body that nourished the primordial spirit. Chapter 485. However, these seniors who cultivated the Tao were not like the wild drought demons. They were slow-witted and did not have much knowledge. Each of them had accumulated years of experience and were extremely intelligent. If it wasn't for Gu Haozi turning into a drought demon and using a mouthful of corpse qi to blind his primordial spirit and heavenly secrets, Chen Ang really did not have the confidence to scheme against him. Fortunately, his primordial spirit was sealed now. It was good enough that he was left with 40% of his original intelligence. However, if he were to use the body of a drought demon to revive and transform into the great Azura supreme demon body, his primordial spirit would merge into the undying demon body. With just a subtle demonic thought, he would be able to give birth to countless cunning, intelligent, vicious, and stubborn thoughts. Scheming against him would be as difficult as ascending to heaven. Great Asura demon path and Mahesvara demon path were orthodoxies that were entangled with Buddha. Many bodhisattvas and sons of Buddha had suffered losses in their hands. How could they be so easy to deal with? When the demon path cultivated to this level, although their hearts were still stubborn, their wisdom and willpower were not inferior to the arhats and bodhisattvas of Buddhism. They were even more cunning. It was also at this time that Chunong was coincidentally able to encounter a drought demon zombie that was about to transform into a great Asura, but had stopped at that step. This gave him the possibility to refine a great Asura, supreme fiend god, that had never been seen before in this world. Based on this, Chunong could be called a great master of the demonic path that shocked the ancients and dazzled the contemporaries. If Chunong wanted to take Gu Hao Zi in, he still had to make many other preparations. So he said to Tan Yun, although we are only guessing the technique that person cultivated, it is definitely not the demon path's method of stealing blood essence and blood sacrifice. Since he discovered Gu Hao Zi's primordial spirit, which is very beneficial to him, he will definitely not give up. To prevent any accidents from happening, he will probably come back frequently to probe. Although I am not afraid of him, I still have to be careful of such an evil technique. This demon refining samadhi fire is a rare true fire that can restrain many demon path techniques in this world. I relied on this fire to have the possibility of refining that person to death. However, this true fire is not mature yet. It still needs a lot of hard work. I want to find a place to practice. Do you know if there are any high mountains nearby that I can collect the sun's true fire? Tanyan didn't have time to think and said, 50,000 miles from here is Hainan Island's Five Finger Mountains. Among them, Motherly Peak is 100,000 feet tall and can be considered one of them. The second is the blessed land of Luojia Mountain in the Southern Sea, which is the most beautiful. The third is the nearby Black Sand Seas, Shao Mountain. Even though it's only 50,000 feet tall, it's the closest and can be returned in a day. When Chunong heard this, he smiled and said, the rest is too far away. Harvesting the sun true fire is not a big deal. If the matter of the sea is delayed, it will be my fault. It's better to choose a place that's closer. I'll have to trouble fellow Taoist to point the way to the Black Sand Seas Wu Mountain. Tan Yun conjured a sea map and pointed it at him. She saw that Chunong was not as arrogant as before and instead showed a bearing. So she mustered up her courage and said to him, Chun Dao Yu is knowledgeable and has vast knowledge. Are you willing to tell me about the Ice Soul Divine Light Escape technique that Senior Gu Haozi taught me? Tan Yun is ignorant and actually can't understand it. Chunong pondered for a moment and agreed. This is not difficult. Also, your natal mana is very heterogeneous. Even though you have the jellyfish's essence to refine it, your foundation is still wrong. There are actually more than 40 true talismans of mana, and many of them overlap and interfere with each other. They are huge and bloated and hard to operate. They are messy and can't be used. You can take the opportunity to refine them and lay a foundation. When Tan Yun heard this, she was overjoyed and said, Is that true? She blurted out her excited words before she thought it through. Then, she felt that her choice of words was inappropriate, so she quickly tried to remedy it. I didn't mean to question you. I was just too happy for a moment and became silly. Chen Daoyu, I heard people say that the Tao Foundation has no regrets. When I entered the Tao, I only had a scroll of unorthodox techniques, so collecting qi to enter the Tao was a little heterogeneous. After that, I coveted a lot of convenience and randomly practiced some spells. I even mixed up the true talismans, so there are dozens of true talismans of mana, and they are not systematic. After that, I suffered a lot of bad consequences and was filled with regret. If you have a way to help me rebuild the Tao Foundation, I'll be grateful to you. Tan Yun will never forget it. Chunong waved his hand and released a wisp of icy soul divine light from his fingertip. The clear and bright divine light was like an ice centipede, flying up and down around Chenang's finger. Then, with another wave of his hand, 15 true talismans flew out from the divine light and hovered above his hand, bobbing up and down. Tanyan looked at these 15 true talismans in a daze. Her expression was joyful, and she quickly concentrated and memorized them. Then, she heard Chenang say, "When cultivators visualize talismans and cultivate their qi into talismans, there will be corresponding supernatural powers." Later on, there were people who refined the talismans into seeds and merged with the primordial spirit, so it could be said to be the true life talisman. Raising one's hand or foot, there will be talismans corresponding to it, so there is no need to concentrate and think. It's just a talisman, and it has a single effect. Therefore, the ancient cultivators of qi only had 1 or 2 extraordinary abilities, such as riding the wind, burning themselves, prolonging their lives, or turning invisible. Later on, there were almighty people who combined several talismans, and with just a few basic talismans, they could form endless spells, which is the so-called mana. And the Tao Foundation has no regrets. It refers to when a cultivator becomes an itinerant immortal. The mana of one's life enters the primordial spirit from the flesh body, and the foundation is planted on the primordial spirit. Other than reincarnation, there is no other way to change it. Chenang smiled indifferently and said, "Therefore, there is still time to change the mana of fellow Taoist. It's just that in the future, you will have to put in 10 times more effort to erase the traces of the original foundation." When Tanyan heard this, she did not have the time to think about other things. She nodded eagerly and said, "There are gains and losses from the previous fate, so it's only natural. Tanyan does not dare to plot anything else. I only ask fellow Taoists to help me rebuild my foundation, and that would be a great favor." Chenang nodded and said, "The Ice Spirit Divine Light Escape technique passed down by Senior Guhao Zi is considered a superior mana of the unorthodox school, but it's a pity that it only has 1 spell and lacks the basic mental cultivation method. There should be 24 natal talismans, but there are only 15 in the Escape Light spell. Among them, there are 12 Divine Light talismans, 1 is missing, and there are only 4 Ice Spirit talismans. If it is used as the foundation, there will no longer be the mana of the Ice Spirit Divine Light spell that can freeze all things. It will only be left with clear ice and a part of the pure foundation. Although there will be help in the cultivation of ice and water spells, it will not be as powerful as the original and will be reduced to the middle stage." Tanyan said frankly, "How is it compared to me before?" Chenang smiled and said in understanding, "Of course it's better than countless. Fellow Taoist's previous foundation was mixed, and it was considered the lowest of the unorthodox schools. After changing to cultivate the Ice Spirit Divine Light, you have the potential to become an itinerant immortal." Tanyan nodded and said excitedly, "Then how would I dare to hope for anything else? I would also like to ask fellow Taoist, if you obtain the Ice Spirit Divine Light's foundation mantra in the future, can you still change your cultivation?" Chenang thought for a moment, then raised his head and answered, "It's fine before becoming an itinerant immortal, but after becoming an itinerant immortal, there will be opportunities." Tanyan thanked him profusely, and her gratitude towards Chenang went straight into her heart. She was an itinerant cultivator, and she knew the fickleness of human nature the best. With such a benefit, she could steel her heart and ignore everything else, and follow a straightforward and resolute path. Now, even if Chenang asked her to give up Gu Haozi's orthodoxy and transfer it to him, she would probably be willing. In the next 3 days, Tanyan broke her previous foundation under Chenang's guidance. Relying on the cold power in the cold spring of the CEI, she refined the jellyfish essence that she had absorbed before and transformed it into a beam of Ice Spirit Divine Light mana and rebuilt her foundation. Although she lost 80% of her mana, after this stage, her cultivation went smoothly and she improved by leaps and bounds. With the Ice Spirit Divine Light's escape technique, she was fast and did not have to worry about being caught. Chapter 486. The Black Sand Sea was a dangerous place. The sea was filled with sharp reefs, and the sea was dark and gloomy. Under the sea, the terrain was rugged. There were cliffs and mountain ranges everywhere. The main peak was 5,000 feet above the sea and was called Shao Mountain by the sea merchants. There were also vicious sharks and fierce dragons. There were many man-eating sea beasts. It was really a forbidden place for the merchants of the four seas. There were many such dangerous places in the world. Mortals lived in secluded corners. Even if there were merchants who traveled all over the world, they could only find a slightly safer route. Even this kind of business was a job with a slim chance of survival. As a result, the Ming dynasty's territory was only 1,000th of the size of China. It was the most prosperous country in the four seas, and it was called Middle-earth. There were billions of places in the world of Shu Mountain, but only 100,000th of it was explored by mortals. The rest were places where cultivators came and went. That was why the cultivators were the main characters in this world. In such a treacherous place, it only took Qin Ong 3 minutes to land his sword light on the top of the mountain. The main peak was as dangerous as the edge of a blade. It was completely bare rock, and there was no vegetation at all. The sea breeze was cut by the two knife-like sides of the mountain, making a strange sound. Chenong stood on the top of the mountain and saw that the mountain breeze was so strong that even the accumulated snow could not accumulate. He waved his hand and released a ray of tying magnetism divine thunder to open up a piece of flat land. He then waved his hand and took out a bronze mirror from his sleeve. He placed a prohibition on it and fixed it in the middle of the mountain. The fierce mountain breeze went around this place. He then called out Lingsha from the Yellow River of Nine Bends formation and said to her, "I want to refine the true Samadhi fire and set up a formation to collect the true fire of the sun. Because I have something else to do, I sent you to guard this place." Although the Tai meteoric mirror is only a prototype, it can store the true fire of the sun on its own. You just have to practice it every noon. If you do this well, I will bestow this mirror to you when you return. As soon as he finished speaking, he transmitted the incantation into her heart and searched for another direction to escape. Sacrificing and refining the true Samadhi fire was only a small matter. The most important thing was to prepare the items for Guhao Zi to cultivate the lunar form refining technique. One of the lunar divine pearls was the key to Chun Ang's plan, so he still had to find and refine it. The tying form refining technique was a technique to support the moon and refine one's physical body and primordial spirit. A tying star was the key, but Guhao Zi was sealed in the sea and could not see the moonlight. How could he cultivate like this? Moreover, when this technique was being practiced, the great Yin star would react, the full moon illuminating tens of thousands of li, not missing for several months, the disturbance extremely great. There would be endless external tribulations coming to disturb him. Gu Haozi was sealed by someone, so how could he dare act like this? The only way was to refine a divine moon pearl and pretend to be a bright moon. Then, he would place his primordial spirit on it and refine his corporeal body. Finally, his primordial spirit would return to his corporeal body. Then, he would borrow the divine moon pearl to refine his primordial spirit and achieve the true form of the Great Yin. There was no doubt about it. If Chunong did not activate the restriction, there was a possibility that he could succeed. Otherwise, he could not even think of deceiving a 1,000-year cultivator like Gu Haozi. However, Chunong only wanted him to complete the first step, which was to refine his corporeal body into the true form of the Great Yin. When it was completed, he would activate the restriction in the divine moon pearl and cause Gu Haozi to be possessed by the devil while refining his primordial spirit. Then, he would refine himself into Chun Ang's divine demon of Yin. Then he would borrow a bit of the true form of the Great Yin and use the true fire of the sun to burn it for 49 days. He would shed the nature of Hanba and cultivate the great Azura's supreme heavenly demon body. Other than Chunong, who was a reincarnated monster from a different world, no one else had such attainments. In order for Hanba to shed his demonic body, he had to cause a drought in the mortal world for 3 years and cause the death of countless living beings. Only then would he have the chance to transform if he was not slain by the cultivators of the right path. Chun Ong had calculated Gu Haozi's background. He was a rogue, celestial who achieved Dao during the Qin dynasty. He died from a calamity in the Eastern Han dynasty. His resentment was not extinguished, and he turned into Hanba. He appeared during the Western Jin dynasty and caused a drought in the mortal world for 3 years, causing the death of countless living beings. At that time, he actually cultivated into a half-demon body. He was the most powerful demon at that time. Later on, he was suppressed by a mighty person and was used to fill up the eye of the sea. For someone like him to appear and cause harm to the mortal world for 3 years, a Hanba that matched the heavens had not been seen in the Central Plains for hundreds of years. It was really rare that he was not eliminated by the cultivators. If it was not because of the chaos of the 5 barbarians that caused a great disaster in the mortal world, he would not have been able to achieve this by chance. There was only one Hanba with such potential since ancient times. It would be difficult for him to appear again in the future. He could be considered as the only one. Chunong was doing research and experiments. He loved this kind of precious specimen the most. Therefore, Chunong would not allow it to fail. If he could take this opportunity to plot against the person who was suspected to have clues about the main deity, it would be even better. The embryo of the divine pearl of Yin was most suitable to be an inner core of a demon that swallowed and spat out the moon. It was best to use the pearl of the flood dragon, the pearl of the centipede, the pearl of the flowing jade of the moonlight, and a giant clam at the bottom of the sea to refine a mother pearl of the dark embryo. Then, it would be refined with the true water of Yin to remove the essence of the pearl, leaving only a little essence of Tayin. Only then would it be considered as successfully cultivated. Chun Ong swallowed and spat out the essence of the moon at night. He crossed the night sky with the Milky Way and refined the true water of Yin. During the day, he searched the 4 seas and made divinations to find a suitable pearl fetus. After a few months, he finally converted a 1,000-year-old mussel into reincarnation and gave it a lot of benefits. In accordance with heaven's will, he kept a 1,000-year-old Xian bead in his pocket without taking any karma. Then, he returned to the top of the black sand sea dragon. He refined the fire during the day and the pearl at night with his disciple. After 36 days, he finally refined a pearl and cultivated the true samadhi fire to a small success. On this day, Chunong was refining the mana of the Milky Way. He used the essence of the sun and moon to merge with the water vapor of the ocean. Suddenly, he sensed something and knew that the prohibition he set in the eye of the South Sea was touched. He kept the silk and the treasured weapons and steered the golden ship towards the eye of the sea. Above the sea's eye, 9 huge tornadoes trapped a person in the center. Infinite gay water, true thunder was triggered, covering the sky and covering the earth, causing the person to suffer unspeakable pain. He could only hide behind a 5-color miasma. Looking at the miasma trembling, the treasured light of the magic treasure faintly dissipating, it was obvious that he could not hold on any longer. However, the waves on the surface of the sea rolled, and endless water vapor rolled over. The true thunder of Yin water was born and extinguished. A divine thunder exploded, and countless seawater soared into the sky. It was then condensed in a more true thunder of Yin water by the giant water tornadoes. How could the power of one person compare with the power of heaven and earth? The person's mana could not be replenished and soon fell into a hopeless situation. When he saw Chun Ang's traveling light, he quickly shouted at him, "Fellow Taoist, please wait. Fellow Taoist, please wait. I accidentally triggered the restriction here. Fellow Taoist, please lend me a hand and help me escape from the restriction." Chun Ong shouted in midair, "I'm the one who set up this restrictive spell to trap a fiend who is slaughtering living beings and extracting the blood essence of the 3-star beauty swan Ni to cultivate an evil technique. This place is remote. If no one attacks the 3-star beauty transformed by my treasured weapon, the prohibition will not be activated. Hurry up and explain. Otherwise, when I combine the mother wind with the true thunder of Yin water, the power of wind and thunder will be 10 times more terrifying. By then, you will only be left with a strand of soul to reincarnate, Don't blame me for not giving you a chance. Chapter 487. Although you are wearing a kind-looking shell, do you think I can't recognize the bloody light floating under your skin? It was just a random guess, but I didn't expect to guess your background. It is indeed the evil method of the Blood God Sutra. Besides, the original Blood God Sutra only has the method of robbing blood essence and soul. It will never rob the consciousness and mana of a cultivator. Chenong felt that he might have found the traces of the interference of the main god. The bloody light that appeared on this person was like the son of Blood God. Obviously, the original owner of this skin had been swallowed by him, and even his consciousness had been robbed. His mana and memory were the same as before. Even if the person was close to him, they wouldn't be able to see it. Chenong also saw that his physical body was floating and vaguely formed by the bloody light. It was different from the normal form, so he realized the truth. This person's physical body was closer to the state of the infant of the mystic door, but there was an extra evil chi in his bones and a trace of bloody light floating in his primordial spirit. This was the original body of the son of Blood God. Thinking of this, Chenong waved his right hand, and the mist on the sea turned into the one sky water banner and returned to his hand. He then shook the long watercolored banner in his hand, and endless water threads fell down. With just one strike, the number of Gue water divine thunders in the Mother Wind Chi essence was increased by 10 times. They exploded together, and the sound of thunder rumbled, tearing the miasma that protected the person into pieces. Seeing how fierce Chenong was, the person was scared out of his wits. He could only release a clear glass mirror, and a ball of mirror light the size of an acre protected his body. He kept begging to Chenong, looking very pitiful. Chenong just sneered and waved the banner again, wanting to kill him here and now. Tan Yun shouted from behind, "Fellow Taoist, please have mercy. I'm afraid there must be some misunderstanding." Chenong paused for a moment, stopped the spell, and waited for her to come up. At first, Tan Yun was still 100 miles away, but in an instant, she landed on the cloud near Chenong. Her speed was 100 times faster than before. It was obvious that she had mastered the Ice Soul Divine Light Escape. With an anxious look on her face, she came to the middle of the formation, disregarding her fight with Chenong. She first carefully looked at the appearance of the person trapped in the restrictive spell before hesitantly asking, "Is that Reverend M.O. of Yellow Rock Island? I went to visit her a few days ago." Chenong already knew that the person below was a devil. The shell on his body had been used by the devil to harm others. That immortal M.O. of Yellow Rock Island had probably been harmed by him long ago. However, this person had used the Blood God's son to harm others, and the soul and memory of the victim were all there. If he imitated it, no one would be able to recognize him. Therefore, Chenong just let him pretend. Sure enough, when Reverend M.O. saw the Gue water restrictive spell stop, he smiled bitterly and said, "Fairy Tan, please don't joke. The last time you and I met was 5 years ago. What do you mean by recently?" Tan Yun heaved a sigh of relief and said to Chenong, "Chen Daoyu, I know the person below. He's an individual cultivator from Yellow Rock Island 500 miles away. His background is clear, and he's not a devil cultivator. Reverend M.O. is skilled in earth and wood spells and has lived on Yellow Rock Island for hundreds of years. Before I came here, I had dealings with him. He's not with the previous person, so please let him out." Chenong already knew what to do, but he pretended to think for a moment and shouted, "You said you're Reverend M.O. of Yellow Rock Island? But I don't know how many individual cultivators can last for 3/4 of an hour under my Gue Water True Thunder restriction. Besides, that miasma cloud was from Yaojiang." He turned around and asked Tan Yun, "Does Reverend M.O. have these 2 magic treasures?" He used his magic power to draw a bit of the broken cloud and pointed at the mirror in Reverend Mo's hand. Tan Yun frowned and observed for a moment before shaking her head and saying, "Reverend Mo's powerful magic treasures are the 6 earth and wood crystal sand. I've never heard of him having these 2 magic treasures." Having said that, she couldn't help but feel a trace of doubt and looked at Reverend Mo to hear his explanation. With a bitter face, Reverend Mo said, "The 5 cloud miasma is my trump card. I usually keep it a secret and only use it to protect myself when the great calamity comes." After saying that, he revealed an extremely vivid expression of heartache and looked at Chun'ong with an expression of being angry but not daring to say anything. He continued, "As for this submerged sea glazed mirror, it's a treasure I obtained a few days ago from an overseas individual cultivator. He left a message saying that his remains are here, so I came to look for him. I didn't expect to disturb fellow Taoist's restrictive spell." Reverend Mo's performance completely convinced Tan Yun. She persuaded in a low voice, "Now that Chen Daoyu has no more doubts, can you let Reverend Mo out?" Chenong didn't answer. He just flew forward for a distance, getting closer and closer to the edge of the restrictive spell. Reverend Mo stared at Chun Ong anxiously. Seeing that he didn't respond, he sighed and said, "Fine. I think you're still worried about me. How about this? I'll let you guard the magic treasures. Even if you let me out, I won't be able to fight back. Is that okay?" Only then did Chun Ong nod and say, "Fine, give me the magic treasures. I'll use this streamer to trap you first so that you won't launch an attack from afar." He waved the Tiani Life water streamer in his hand, turning it into a magical cloud and entering the restrictive spell. Old Taoist Mo sighed and looked extremely reluctant. He put his submerged sea glazed mirror, 6 grains of earthwood crystal sand, an unorthodox flying sword, and a blood-red amber-like object on the magical cloud, wrapped them up, and sent them to Chun Ong. Chun Ong glanced at them and sneered. Ordinary cultivators couldn't see them, but when he scanned them with his primordial spirit, he found that these objects all had a trace of blood-red light, especially that blood-red amber, which was obviously transformed from a son of Blood God. If he didn't pay attention and found a flaw, the son of Blood God would turn back to his original form, pounce on him, suck his blood essence, and take away his primordial spirit. As for the other magic treasures, as long as Chun Ong picked them up and used his magic power to probe them, the son of Blood God's magic power would be lifeless and seep into Chun Ang's magic power, dissolving all of his magic power. At that time, his life and death would be in his hands, and refining him into a son of Blood God would be a piece of cake. This kind of magic power was the most hidden. Even if ordinary cultivators noticed it, they would only suspect that it was caused by internal or external demons. They would never think that it was a demonic parasite like the son of Blood God. However, Chun Ang's celestial river magic power was the foundation created by the sect master of the other realm. It was supplemented by Chun Ang's real body and verified by his incarnation in this life. It was already one of the best magic powers in the 3 realms. Whether it was the Tiani true water that could contain all things, the Xianming true water that could freeze the ages, or the first essence heavy water that was integrated into one, they were all extremely pure power that could not tolerate impurities like the magic power of the son of Blood God. Even if it was invaded by the son of Blood God, this kind of magic power would be incompatible and would be purified by him slightly. Chapter 488. When Chun Ong picked up the 2 items, he felt 2 extremely tiny strands of strange magic power sneaking into his body. The 2 strands of magic power didn't look strange on the surface. They were like warm blood qi that wanted to melt into Chun Ang's flesh and blood. However, Chun Ang's spirit, qi, and spirit were refined as one. Therefore, the 2 strands of strange magic power were very conspicuous and were easily caught by him. With Chun Ang's ability, he could naturally sense the deep hatred and stubbornness hidden in the blood qi. It was just a strand of magic power, but it gave Chun Ong a feeling of cunning and wisdom. It was even trying to pry into Chun Ang's consciousness. Immediately, he concluded that the magic power of the Blood God Son was not the original version passed down by the Blood God Elder. It was like the legendary 129,600 Blood God Sons in the Blood Sea. After swallowing a cultivator, they could create a Blood God Son with the same memory and supernatural power. The poison was endless and hidden deep. It could easily destroy a person's spirit and body. Chun Ong was worried that the person would find out something was wrong, so he used his magic power to imitate a greedy and stupid consciousness and transmitted it through the Blood God's magic power. Chenong glanced over and saw a trace of sneer flashing across Jinrenmo's eyes. He immediately understood what was going on. Suddenly, he absorbed a strand of the blood god Sun's chi and used his extremely high magic power to suddenly cast a curse to freeze the person's primordial spirit. The tiny water streamer in his hand covered down. How could Jinrenmo, whose primordial spirit was frozen, have time to react? He was simply frozen and sealed in the streamer. Chunang's unexpected move caught the female cultivator, Tan Yun, unprepared. She was terrified and thought, what is Chun Daoyo's reaction? Could it be that he was moved by the magic treasures and wanted to steal the treasures and kill people? Although the azure glass mirror and the earthwood crystal sand are good, they're just unorthodox magic treasures. Is the magic treasures in Chun Daoyo's hands far better? Why? He wants to steal the treasures and kill people? Could it be that I misjudged him? Then why did he teach me to purify my foundation and recultivate my magic power? Or is he plotting something bigger? Chenong didn't know what was going through her mind, so he just smiled and said, "Fellow Taoist, don't worry. I've already guessed that this person should be the enemy we're looking for. Even if it's not, it's most likely related to him." Tan Yun said doubtfully, "Although fellow Taoist Mo and I aren't old acquaintances, we can't be." Chenong raised his hand to interrupt her. Pointing at the one sky water banner, he said, "Look again. Is he still Dao, friend Mo?" Tan Yun turned her head and looked over. Inside the streamer, Reverend Mo's body was slightly distorted. His color faded, and his whole body became blood red, as if he was made of blood. Gradually, the color faded, leaving only a smear of blood. Dao friend Mo's face appeared on the blood shadow, sinister and terrifying. "This is..." Tan Yun was at a loss for words. She pointed at the bloody shadow in the banner. "This is a blood god." Chenong sighed. "I'm afraid fellow Taoist Mo is in trouble." Chun-Ong stretched out his hand and peeled off the bloody shadow that wrapped around Reverend Mo. There were still a dozen or so identical bloody shadows hidden inside. They were only the size of a wicker basket. Chun-Ong peeled them off one by one and let Tan Yun identify them. They were cultivators from overseas and wandering cultivators nearby. There was no lack of people from Middle-earth among them. So many wandering cultivators from overseas had been refined into blood gods. It was truly insane. "I'm afraid this person isn't from overseas, but someone from Middle-earth." Chun-Ong calculated the origins of the people who were the first to be refined into blood gods. As expected, they were cultivators from Middle-earth. Tan Yun was already extremely furious. Even though she had always been kind, she couldn't help but scold. Who did this? How could they be so insane? Chenong thought, "I'm already 80% sure that this is the work of the main god. The Blood God Sutra originated from this land, so it's natural for it to be circulated. It's also reasonable for someone to innovate and create a new world during the circulation. Based on my deduction, the origin of this sutra should be faintly related to Deng Yin. If I didn't know that the Blood God Sutra had an extraterrestrial version, I probably wouldn't have suspected that it was the work of the extraterrestrial demons. This must be the main god's misgivings. He's afraid of being easily spied on. It's similar to how I pinned the origin of the celestial river's mana on Cult Master Chun from the other world. If you say there's no relationship between them, I'll be the first to not believe it." His hands didn't stop there. He grabbed the real body of the blood god, hidden in one of the bloody shadows. His primordial spirit was controlled by Chun-Ong, so he was unaware and couldn't feel anything in the outside world. Time passed, and he seemed to be dead. Looking at his appearance, he was a young man. His original body had probably been refined into a bloody light. If he continued to make deductions, he could only vaguely deduce that it was an old demon in West Kunlun. That person's mana was profound, and his primordial spirit was sharp enough to see through heaven's secrets. Chenong was afraid of rashly alerting the enemy, so he didn't delve deeper. He probed the celestial river's mana into his body. That layer of bloody light looked weak, but it was actually extremely tough. Chenong wasn't afraid of easily destroying his soul. He integrated the celestial river's mana into the blood god's mana and sensed the subtleties of his mana from afar. Although it was only for a short time, Chunong saw many mysteries. He also discovered a wisp of mana that came from the same source as the Blood God Sutra. However, it was even more vicious and hidden. After studying it carefully, he realized that this person had long been secretly controlled by someone. Although he seemed to be free, his consciousness was actually controlled by someone else. He had already been refined into the Blood God Sutra and only retained a bit of autonomy. However, if that person were to make things difficult for him, he would probably be at the mercy of others. His thoughts would all be controlled by others. Thinking about it further, it was extremely terrifying. Chunong thought to himself, "Fortunately, I made the first move and fixed this person's consciousness, so the Blood God Sutra in his body didn't spread any information. However, I have to deal with it quickly. Otherwise, if this person's consciousness is immersed for a long time, the person controlling him might also find out that something is wrong." He immediately summoned the Golden Ship of Fortune and suppressed the Blood God Sutra. With the power of the Golden Ship of Fortune's restriction, no matter how vicious the Blood God Sutra was, they wouldn't be able to cause any trouble. After informing Tan Yun, he silently used his primordial spirit to deduce the various mysteries of the Blood God Sutra. He didn't know the tricks of the Blood God Sutra's other techniques, but the Blood God's Sutra relied on the nameless resentment in the soul to refine the body with magic. It refined the original body into a bloody light that relied on magic. It was best at robbing people's blood chi and soul. There was no difference in the first step. They would first peel off their own skin, stab their body with magic, and then refine it with magic. They would suffer for at least 9 years. When the whole body was refined and turned into a bloody shadow, it would be successful. This was also the scheme of the God of Fortune to hide this sutra. However, the Blood God's Sutra skin wasn't engraved with the great Azura demon, but the 49 River Styx Blood Sea True talismans. This time, Chunong wanted to deduce the true meaning of these 49 true talismans. Even though he didn't know the mysteries of the other vicious techniques, he knew the fundamentals. Whether it was learning about them in the future or restraining them, he would be confident in plotting against the Blood God Sutra Master. Moreover, this Blood God Sutra's restriction on the Blood God Sutra was more profound than the Demon Sutra's sutra of suppressing gods and demons that Chunong had learned before. It could be used to refine Guhao's drought demon body into the supreme demon body of the Great Azura.